The lake's surface lay still, a tranquil mirror of turquoise waters speckled with dense strands of watergrass that drifted just beneath, filtering the golden sunlight above. A few fiery red waterfowl floated lazily, their heads tucked beneath their wings in slumber. Standing on the slick edge of the stone embankment, Zheng Qing craned his neck, peering cautiously into the glassy depths. A shadow darted beneath the surface. Startled, he lost his footing and tumbled off the edge. "Careful there. We'll get to the lake's secrets soon enough," Nicholas said with a chuckle, patting Zheng Qing's shoulder before turning to address the group of newcomers. "The academy is laid out with strict order. If the square we just crossed is the forecourt, then this lake marks the middle courtyard. This is Lin Zhong Lake. Don't ask me why it's named that." "I don't know either," Nicholas added, waving off a few curious freshmen before they could raise their hands. "What's important is that the buildings around this lake will become the most familiar sights of your school life." Zheng Qing looked around. The lake was surrounded by an eclectic mix of structures, each striking in its own way. Nicholas began pointing them out. "That white tower over there is the school hospital. Don't stare at it too long. It's said to bring misfortune. That blocky square building, that's the Wizard Union Bank, Geo Branch. You want to load your student cards with funds there sometime this week." He gestured to a large, cauldron-shaped building. "That's the cafeteria. The food's not gourmet, but it's plentiful and diverse. Whether you're a bloodborne, werewolf, ghostkin, or Doni, the chefs make sure there's something for everyone." "Now, that hill-like structure across the lake," he said, nodding at a looming silhouette. "That's the pride of Jiuyo Academy, our book mountain library. We won't have time to visit today, but you'll be spending plenty of time there soon." As they walked the lakeside path, Nicholas led them toward a modest wooden dock at its end. A small cabin stood at the entrance, and beside it, tethered to a post, lay an old dog with drooping skin. It barely reacted to their approach, only lifting its head and flicking a wrinkled eyelid before slumping back into its straw nest. The students instinctively kept their distance. Nicholas knocked on the cabin's glass window. "Uncle Ferna," bringing the new blood across the lake. The dog let out a grumble of protest, clearly displeased at having its nap disturbed. Smiling, Nicholas tossed a biscuit from his pocket. The dog didn't move, but with a swift paw, it snatched the treat and tucked it beneath its belly without so much as opening its eyes. A muffled reply came from inside the cabin, and a small wooden plaque dropped onto the windowsill, though no one saw exactly where it came from. "Who's in there?" Zheng Qing asked in a hushed voice. "That's Uncle Ferna," Nicholas replied. "Retired professor from First University. Now he's the ferryman on the silent river." "The dog looks ancient," someone whispered. Nicholas grinned. "Her name's May. She's older than any of you. Twice over, in fact. She's been Uncle Ferna's companion for decades. If you see her wandering around campus, show some respect." Tied at the dock were several small crimson boats, each able to seat 6 or 7. A bamboo pole jutted from the bow of each vessel, a tiny bronze bell hanging from the tip. "These are Zheng boats, the main way to cross Lin Zhong Lake," Nicholas explained as the students boarded. "Unless you've got a hippo or a water buffalo of your own, this is your ride." His tone turned slightly serious. "Even after all my time here, I still don't know half of what lives in this lake." "Be careful," a girl with a shaky voice asked. "Are there water ghosts?" Nicholas laughed. "Water ghosts? Please, they be eaten by morning. The mermaid clans here use them for rituals." "Mermaids?" a boy gasped, quickly turning to his friend. "My grandmother says they eat human flesh. The Wizard Alliance regulates their habitats strictly." Nicholas gave a sly smile. "This lake happens to be a sanctioned habitat. So yes, boys and girls, stay alert. If you fall in, you won't even get a chance to scream before you're pulled under." Xiao Xiao, watching from the back, yawned in boredom while Nicholas reveled in scaring the students. Zheng Qing, on the other hand, watched the water like a hawk. "Hold on tight," Nicholas barked, grabbing the bamboo pole and giving it a shake. Ding, ding, ding. The bronze bell chimed, and the Zheng boat gave a faint lurch. Nervous hands clutched the railings. "We're off," Nicholas shouted, stomping hard on the deck. The boat jolted forward. Zheng Qing spotted a thick, dark cord slowly tightening at the bow, churning ripples across the surface. "There's something ahead," he yelled, but his voice was lost in the chorus of panicked shrieks. "There's something under the boat," he called again, clutching a box in one arm while gripping the rail with the other. Nicholas, watching from a bow, simply smiled. "They're the boatmen." Xiao Xiao leaned in and whispered. "Each boat is towed by someone, or something, beneath the water." "Boatman?" Zheng Qing blinked. "Could be a mermaid, a kappa, or a water serpent. Plenty of smart creatures live in these waters. They'll do a few trips across the lake for some jade coins." "Please stop talking," Xiao Xiao muttered, going pale. "I'm getting seasick." His glasses slid slightly down his nose, but he dared not let go of the railing. Zheng Qing smirked, but said nothing. He glanced down at the paper box in his arms. The little elves inside still sound asleep, blissfully unaware. As they sailed, they passed a small island in the lake center. Atop it stood a tall, white tower with 7 levels, each adorned with hanging bells and fluttering silk. Zheng Qing pointed. "What's on that island?" Nicholas grew stern. "Forbidden ground. You'll be told more by your mentors, but know this now, the island is strictly off-limits. Even professors need special permission to go there." The students watched the island fade into mist with a reverent silence. No one asked what happened to those who trespassed. "Do we always need to take a boat across the lake?" Zheng Qing asked, still eyeing the moving cable. "Of course not," Nicholas said, a little exasperated. "I already told you. Our school is full of magical doors and corridors. Some lead to other parts of campus. Some lead to other academies entirely." Zheng Qing nodded quickly, taking it all in. Mystical islands, invisible ferrymen, ancient dogs, and mermaids lurking beneath the surface. "You might want to consider taking the boat more often," Nicholas said, glancing at Xiao Xiao with genuine concern. "You could build up a bit of immunity to seasickness. At First University, not being able to ride a boat is inconvenient." Xiao Xiao merely grunted in reply, eyes narrowed, saying nothing. Then, "Monster!" A sharp cry of terror cut through the air. Zheng Qing immediately turned to look. Roughly 10 meters away, something was breaking the stillness of Linzhong Lake. Rising from the water was a monstrous creature, a grotesque blend of man and fish. Its body was covered in black-blue scales that glistened dully in the twilight. A bony fin jutted from the crown of its head down its spine, and its limbs, though short, were thick with muscle. Webbed hands and feet, each ending in 3 claws, splayed against the lake surface. 2 pale, vacant fish eyes scanned the students on shore. Its gaping mouth, exposed rows of needle-sharp teeth, made even more menacing by the dusky light. "Fishman!" someone screamed, one of the boys standing near Nicholas, his voice cracking with fright. Zheng Qing froze. So that was a fishman. He remembered it clearly from Wizard World Encyclopedia, a book Thomas had once helped him borrow. The volume had an entire section dedicated to intelligent aquatic creatures, one of the 3 major categories of native wizarding species. Among them, fishmen, mermaids, and sea demons were the 3 most established societies. Sea demons, often called sirens, were known for their illusion magic and haunting songs, but their true forms remained a mystery. The only universal feature, beautiful wings. Mermaids, by contrast, were radiant beings, their upper bodies human, lower halves Piscine, garbed in flowing silks. They loved clean waters and playful company. Fishmen, however, were nothing like the others. Also known as Naga, they were savage, hideous, and largely devoid of intelligence. They avoided magic, preferring brute force. Dwelling in murky, stagnant waters, they bred water ghosts like livestock and were known to feed on human flesh. During the Second Witch Demon Wars a century ago, they had nearly gone extinct, reduced to a few dwindling colonies in regulated reserves. Linzhong Lake was one such reserve, and the creature before them was one of its last remaining inhabitants. Zheng Qing's grip tightened around the gray cloth bag in his arms. His eyes sparkled with a strange fascination breath quickening. He wanted a closer look. "Back, everyone!" Nicholas commanded, raising his law book protectively in front of the group. The heavy tome sparked and crackled ominously, magical glyphs glowing between its fluttering pages. Xiao Xiao, calm despite the chaos, yanked Zheng Qing behind a nearby cascabila tree. "What? I'd rather not be punched by a fishman or blown up by a misfiring spell," Xiao Xiao muttered under his breath. Zheng Qing glanced back at Nicholas's law book, heart hammering in his chest. "Was that smoke? What's it doing?" a small girl near the front cried out. Everyone turned. The fishman had grabbed a ribbon attached to a student's backpack. It yanked on it, slowly reeling the girl in like prey. The girl clung to her bag in terror, her body being dragged across the wet earth. Coiled around her neck was a spectacled cobra, raised in alarm, hissing furiously at the creature. "This, my mind," the fishman growled in broken, guttural speech, winding the ribbon around its thick arm. Zheng Qing inhaled sharply. "That girl, Lu Fei Fei," Xiao Xiao answered, resigned. "Freshman, astronomy class 08-1. The snake's name is Little Dragon. Help her!" Zheng Qing shouted, rushing forward with Xiao Xiao close behind. Several students sprang into action, scrambling to grab Lu Fei Fei and pull her away. Their efforts looked almost comical, like children tugging on a stubborn dog's leash. The fishman backed toward the water, undeterred, its eyes as lifeless as ever. "Then, reveal your shame," Nicholas bellowed, flinging open his law book. The spark stopped, for brilliant glyphs shot from the book, diving into the lake with explosive force. Zheng Qing flinched. He recognized those glyphs, spells that conjured mist and dew. He's trying to make the ground slippery? Why not just cut the ribbon? A blade would have solved this. The lake's surface bubbled, releasing a thick fog. The runes surged upward, unleashing a cool mist that quickly spread and blanketed the scene. The fishman paused, eyes glowing with sudden delight. It bent forward, inhaling deeply. The moisture soothed its dry gills and parched throat, revitalized its straightened, grinning wide. For the fishman, it was perfect: mist, damp stone, and the promise of water just ahead. The enchantment's mist began to condense, settling onto the flagstones as dew. The entire lakefront was now a slick hazard. The fishman didn't mind. Its wide, webbed feet slapped wetly against the stones, claws gripping tight as it shuffled backward with practiced ease. But the students? They weren't ready. Rubber-soled shoes screeched against the wet stone, and one by one, the freshmen began to slip and stumble. Several girls shrieked. A boy landed hard on his side. Nicholas stood nearby, smacking his still-smoking book in frustration. Zheng Qing sighed. This was not how he wanted to get close to a fishman. Yet, close he would get, because no one, not even those slipping and sliding in panic, was letting go of that ribbon.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Translucent eyelids covered its eyeballs, making its eyes appear foggy, giving a sense of drowsiness. The scales of the fishman were beautiful. From a distance, they seemed a dull blue-gray. But up close, the mesmerizing oily gloss on the scales was dazzling. The fishman had remarkable strength. Its bulging biceps and smooth deltoids were enough to make any fitness-loving man envious. But if you asked Zheng Qing for his deepest impression of the fishman, he would only say one word: stinky. It was reminiscent of methane gas rolling out from the deepest part of the muck, like the smell after storing grains for a very long time. The freshman hadn't felt the power of the creature's fist yet, fleeing already under its passive chemical attack. As soon as they got close, a disgusting smell assaulted their senses, causing a few pampered newcomers to vomit immediately. Even the cobra around Lu Fei Fei's neck had retreated its fangs back into its mouth, not hissing in protest anymore. Zheng Qing held back the urge to vomit, but the stench made his scalp tingle and his limbs go weak. His eyes blurry with tears, he took out a stack of clear heart talismans from his gray cloth bag and slapped them on a fellow student's body. The talismans shimmered with a golden-red glow in the gloomy daylight. A series of hurried gasps sounded by the lake. Gratitude beyond words. A teary-eyed male student stammered with choked sobs. Everyone else was all praises for Zheng Qing's talisman. Coughing forcefully, Xiao Xiao adjusted his glasses. Let's go all out and hang this big-headed fish on the tree. Holding his breath, Zheng Qing tightened his hold on the cloth strip, almost lying on the ground. The boys responded enthusiastically. At this moment, a tall young man ran down from the distant hills. "What are you guys doing?" the young man shouted. The fisherman paused for a moment, glanced at the incoming young man, hissed twice, flexing its muscles and pulling vigorously. An incomparable force swept towards them. The freshmen, who had just gathered their spirits, fell in all directions under the tug of the strip. "The fishman is stealing something." A few girls cried out in panic. The tug-of-war was approaching the end. The freshmen were thoroughly defeated. The fishman was smirking, pulling at the strip, ready to claim its spoils of war. North Wind, the young man who had run from a distance, raised his law book and shouted at the fishman. The fishman shuddered, dropped the strip, and slip-slided into the nearby lake. The few students who were tugging of war with the fishman immediately fell over each other. "What are you doing?" The young man who drove away the fishman ran to the freshman and scolded harshly. Zheng Qing noticed 3 black strips on his robe. This was a third-year veteran. "That monster was trying to steal our bags," a brave male student added. "My bag fell into the lake," Lu Fei Fei weakly added from the side. "Freshman," the third-year student frowned. There was a chorus of agreement around him. "Where's the freshman guide?" the veteran demanded sternly. Nicholas, in another red robe, stepped forward. Zheng Qing then noticed another veteran by the lake. "Why would you let the freshman clash with the fishman? Don't you two understand the situation at Linzhong Lake?" The third-year student stood in front of the 2 freshman guides and scolded them. Zheng Qing rubbed his swollen hands, curiously glancing at them. Xiao Xiao was busily flipping through his notebook beside him, grumbling under his breath. "Next time something like this happens, you go up yourself. Don't drag me into it. I don't like such troubles." Zheng Qing ignored his complaint and quietly asked, "Who's that third year? He seems pretty fierce." "Someone from the student council." Xiao Xiao responded succinctly. A finger prodded Zheng Qing from behind, interrupting his further inquiries. "Your little elves?" The short girl handed the cardboard box back to Zheng Qing. "They're sound asleep." Zheng Qing accepted the box, thanking her profusely. Lu Fei Fei was hugging her bag, standing under a tree and silently sobbing with teary eyes. A few girls huddled around her, offering soft words of comfort. "Did you see that spell? It was amazing." The fishman was flung straight into the water. He didn't even get a chance to cry out. Recalling the sight of the fishman beating a hasty retreat, Zheng Qing couldn't help but exclaim. Xiao Xiao glared at him, looking at Zheng Qing as if he was an idiot. "Did you see the spell manifesting? That senior just scared the fishman with his shouting." "Scared?" Zheng Qing gaped in astonishment. North Wind can cause significant damage to fishmen and is a high-level spell. Applying it is not that simple. Presumably, the group of fishmen in Linzhong Lake have stayed at the university for a while and have learned to avoid harm. They know which spells can harm them. Xiao Xiao shook his head and explained. "So you're saying that the fishman jumped into the water out of fear?" Zheng Qing wondered aloud. "I think the senior is even more amazing." Xiao Xiao heaved a sigh, not saying another word. A little while later, the third-year student hurriedly left. The 2 freshman guides were once again gathering the scattered members around the lake. Nicholas was looking at his scorched law book with a miserable expression, not saying a word. Xiao Xiao seemed relieved. Zheng Qing chuckled to himself, glad that he no longer had to worry about Nicholas's law book exploding in his presence. The other fledgling guide was angrily scolding Lu Fei Fei. "Why didn't you let go when I told you to earlier? Have a death wish? Is your bag more important than your life?" "I didn't react in time," Lu Fei Fei replied weakly. "How can you be so stupid?" The exasperated guide waved his law book. "Can't you understand one simple word, to let go?" "I didn't know," the girl muttered, looking blankly at the rather irritable guide in front of her. How can anyone be this stupid? The guide banged his law book against his forehead. Hearing those words, Zheng Qing felt slightly discontent. Why should we let go? He asked Xiao Xiao. That bag is clearly Lu Fei's. Because the bag fell into the lake, Xiao Xiao readjusted his glasses. For the fishmen, the area where the lake water flows is their territory. Any items falling into the lake belong to the fishmen. That's too unfair, Zheng Qing said, aghast. You want to reason with the fishmen? Xiao Xiao mocked him. They belong to a species that solves conflicts with their fists. Their world knows no reasoning. You can't impose a wizard's morals and logic onto the fishmen. Besides, if your garden experienced a rain of gold coins, would you return those coins to the heavens? Zheng Qing shook his head, enlightening him somewhat. With this logic, he reluctantly agreed that Lu Fei's actions were indeed right. Only a faint glimmer of daylight remained. The evening breeze brushed across the lake, lazily scattering the water ripples. The red big birds, which were originally resting on the lake's surface, began to stir. They withdrew their necks from underneath their wings, shook their heads, and slowly fluttered their enormous wings. The gentle wind swept through the treetops, shedding a few leaves. The wind by the lake was a bit chilly. Zheng Qing was still wearing a short-sleeved shirt underneath his robe. He shivered, took out a towel from his gray cloth bag, and draped it over the cardboard box he was holding. The two groups of new students have not yet left the lakeside. Nicholas was diligently inspecting several new students. In his view, any newcomers too close to the fishmen would be exposed to the evil radiation radiated by the fishmen. This horrifying radiation will disrupt your own magic abilities, affecting your initial grading examination at the beginning of school, Nicholas warned earnestly, and then gave each student he had checked a piece of mint candy. Mint can effectively get rid of the fishman's evil radiation. Although Zheng Qing was skeptical, he still obediently accepted the inspection. This was because Xiao Xiao, who always dropped her books, didn't object to Nicholas's major inspections. Not far away, another instructor couldn't stop berating Lu Fei for her clumsiness. The girl clutching the cobra stood pathetically there, her eyes red. She's not stupid. She just doesn't understand the situation. Nicholas went over and soothed. There is no need for any extra explanation. The surrounding new students, who felt that the mentor was making a big deal out of a small matter, echoed in agreement. Lu Fei blinked, her tears starting to pour down incessantly. Several girls hurriedly came to her side, pulling out tissues and handkerchiefs, and comforting her continuously. Another senior looked at Nicholas with annoyance, then raised his eyebrows and flashed a strange smile on his face. So, it's Senior Nicholas. He drew out the word Senior Nicholas in an implicitly mocking tone. It seems that the senior understands this very well. After saying that, he touched the black edge of his robe, raised his head, snorted coldly, and ignored his new students as he turned and walked away directly. The new students were silent, watching Nicholas carefully. Nicholas spat into the lake fiercely, clapped his hands together, and didn't speak. A few croaking sounds came from the surface of the water. Zheng Qing looked towards the sound. A frog hopped out of the lake and onto a large blue stone on the shore. It opened its mouth and croaked a few times, then began to sing a strange tune. Croak, croak. A mouse stealthily sneaks ashore. 3 old men foolishly don't see. Croak, croak. 3 old men foolishly don't see. Croak. A dark shadow suddenly sprang up, interrupting the frog's singing and swallowing the noisy amphibian whole. It was Lu Fei's pet cobra. Zheng Qing was stunned, watching this slick pet comfortably sticking out its tongue and slithering back to its owner's side. Lu Fei blinked her red eyes and wiped off the unknown black and green liquid from the corner of the cobra's mouth with her already soaked handkerchief. Why didn't your snake go where it was supposed to? Zheng Qing, looking at the lazy long worm that was slumped in a heap, finally couldn't help but ask. He was very curious that this big snake could appear deep within the campus, including Poseidon, the little fox, and Xiao Zhao's old tortoise, All the pets brought by the new students left their owners in the first hall. Lu Fei was the first new student he saw with a pet. Little Dragon was attacked by a demon. Professor and allowed me to bring it in to see a doctor. Lu Fei answered softly, stroking her pet's head. The cobra, which had just swallowed a frog, gently raised its head and nuzzled in the warm palm of the girl. Zheng Qing sighed and held his box in his arms a little tighter. Not far away, a few new students were still squatting by the trace of the frog and having a lively discussion. That frog was just singing. Did you guys understand what it was singing? Shouldn't the more noteworthy thing be why we can understand the frog singing? This is a magical university. If the frogs here can't even sing, it's too disappointing. Hearing this response, Zheng Qing was speechless and surprisingly had no counterargument. The sky was getting dark. After hesitating for a few minutes by the lakeside, Nicholas decisively announced that all new students of the two groups should follow him to complete the subsequent touring tasks. No one objected to this sole solution. Nicholas no longer lingered on every bit of history in the academy, but he couldn't help but show off the legends he heard from obscure corners. The Book Mountain Library is a great place for self-study and research. Although there are only 5 floors, it's quite vast, with doors linked and layers interlocked. It is like a huge maze, so you must prepare well before entering. Nicholas sighed, looking somewhat distressful. I'm not suggesting you remember the routes, but to pack enough food. Although the library is cleared out every day, you sometimes inevitably stumble into some secluded corners, and then, the longest record in the academy is a student being trapped in a library for 80 days. The new students were in an uproar. They could not imagine the library being a giant maze. Neither could they imagine how that student survived those 80 days trapped in the library. From the Book Mountain Library, a flagstone path stretches out, taking a small turn by the lake, straight towards the deeper areas of the academy. On both sides of the road were towering paulownia trees. Their broad leaves densely overlapped, forming a quiet tree-shaded path. Several pairs of green eyes peered through the gaps in the leaves, quietly watching the new students passing under the trees. Nicholas led the new students in a light jog, careful not to disturb the inhabitants of the trees. Passing through the tree-lined path, a rolling hill landscape appeared before everyone. As the sky darkened, Zheng Qing could only vaguely see some strange peaks and black forests in the distance. The shadow wall belongs to the entrance courtyard, the main teaching building to the front courtyard, Linzhong Lake to the middle courtyard, and here, Nicholas spoke and waved his hand grandly, encompassing the garden behind them. This is the back courtyard of the academy. East Peach Garden, West Hua Garden, Yinfang Garden, they all belong within this back courtyard. Your dormitory is in the West Hua Garden. Between the gardens are plantations and spirit dwellings, offering safety to the exotic plants and your little companions. You will gradually understand the details in your future studies. It's getting quite late, and you've all had a tough day. Nicholas paused as he looked at the new students in front of him. Zheng Qing nodded in agreement, slightly dazed in his heart. The names Huizi Ji and Sanyu Bookstore resurfaced in his mind, seeming like something from a long time ago. His various experiences in this single day left him overwhelmed and dazzled. Nicholas kindly observed the new students. If no one has any other opinions, let's take a shortcut back to the front yard. Why are we going back to the front yard? A short girl squatted and puffed out her breath on the ground. Didn't you just say the dormitory is in this backyard? It's because your tour isn't finished yet, Nicholas explained. Besides, I believe it has been a long time since your last big meal. Zheng Qing's stomach conveniently growled. The other newcomers burst into laughter. This made Zheng Qing very embarrassed. Nicholas added with a smile, I need to remind you again. Always remember, do not go to the professor's East Peach Garden without an invitation, do not go to the girls' Yunfang Garden without permission, and do not go to those plantations without protective suits. Most importantly, never go outside of the academy's wall. Although there are many warning and protective charms attached to the wall, they are more directed outward than inward. Every year, there are reckless boys who climb over the wall and rush out of the academy. They always think the world outside is exciting. In reality, just like the other campuses of the first college, the surroundings of the academy are silent forest. If I were you, I would never go there alone before graduation. If you're looking for a lively place, you could go to Beta Town. While speaking, Nicholas led the group to the foot of a pavilion wall. There's a shadow on the wall here that is very different from the surrounding colors. It seems like there used to be a door, but it has been cemented over and sealed. Nicholas took a cloth from the grass beside the pavilion and forcefully wiped the stains on the wall. The wall emitted a rumbling sound of laughter. The shadow folded up, revealing a narrow doorway. Nicholas turned around and saw the shocked expressions on the new students' faces, and he smiled triumphantly. This shortcut can only be opened by senior students. Freshmen, like you, can only take the ferry at Linzhong Lake to Beta Town. Of course, the academy doesn't encourage freshmen to take the ferry. If you need study materials such as stationery, you can apply to the academy. The academy will prepare these supplies for you at a very low cost. Now, let's experience the most bustling place in the entire first college, the Beta Town pedestrian street. Passing through the low, narrow door, they were greeted by a long, narrow street and an overwhelming sound of chatter. Zheng Qing's breath hitched. The drastic change from the tranquil academy to the noisy street left all the newcomers stunned. The narrow street was only over 10 meters wide, but it was winding and stretching out, seemingly endless. The crowded street was filled with colorful robes belonging to students and even professors from all four colleges. A variety of shops lined up one after another, offering snacks, experimental materials, etc., making people linger. Strange tunes filled their ears, rendering them dazed. A sweet scent wafted into Zheng Qing's nostrils. Following the aroma, he found a small candy shop not far away. Zheng Qing took a few quick steps to the front of the shop. In the clean glass window of the shop, two groups of differently colored sugar figurines were in a tense standoff. The sugar figurine on the left was brownish yellow, clad in fish skin armor, with a sugarcane curved knife around its waist, a long bow on its back, and an 8-foot-long spear in its hand. Riding a sturdy Mongolian horse, it radiated an overwhelming aura. The sucrose man on the right was emerald green, draped in radiant armor, with an almond-round shield slung on his arm. He held a Shinji crossbow and a bamboo spear on his back. Straddling a tall Arabian horse, he seemed to be unyielding. On top of the display case, a plump hamster lifted a heavy hazelnut and hurled it. Crash! A green sucrose man atop a large horse was shattered by the hazelnut. It's a plot by the sucrose people. A green sucrose man shouted in exertion. It's a scheme by the sucrose people. They deployed the catapult. A knight has been injured. A knight has been injured. The green sucrose man's cavalry began to assemble in an orderly fashion. Counterattack! 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 They raised their bamboo spears, shouting loudly. Across the way, the brown sucrose people quickly noticed the purposes of these green sucrose people. Maltose people broke the agreement. A brown sucrose man yelled. Their warriors have already mounted, their spears already raised. They want war. The brown knights clamored, crowding together. War! War! Let the war be even fiercer. These brown knights shouted chaotically. Two different colored batches of sucrose people simultaneously turned their horses and retreated. Then, at the end of the two side platforms, they regrouped. On top of the display case, the plump hamster cheerfully ran off the crossbeam, perched at the edge of the display table, looking anticipatedly at the upcoming battle. For the purity and glory of sucrose. The brown sucrose man wildly waved his long spear, looking insane. All glory goes to the maltose. The green sucrose man across raised their spear, praying solemnly. Charge! Kill! The few meters of display platform quickly vanished among the sound of the horse's hooves. The sucrose people and the maltose people's cavalry brutally collided. Toothpicks broke, almonds shattered, small sesame seed eyeballs scattered across the ground. The shattered sucrose people's body fragments floated down, falling outside the display case. The plump hamster squinted, the corners of its mouth stretching into a radiant smile. collecting these sweet fragments into its cheek pouches. Our time is limited. Nicholas interrupted Zheng Qing's excitement, pulling him back to Pedestrian Street. If you're not planning to buy sucrose, people, then don't waste time watching these fancy dramas. But those sucrose people are all broken. Zheng Qing felt it was extraordinarily regrettable. It's all that hamster's fault. There's a rat in the candy store. Why didn't anyone care? Shouldn't they have thrown that fat ball out? You two need to quickly adapt to college life. Nicholas shook his head. As you said, it's a hamster. As a friend of the store owner, it has the right to stay in the display window. Also, the sucrose people were only shattered. Nicholas pointed to a corner of the display window and let Zheng Qing take a closer look. At the two ends of the display case, each had a shiny big bucket placed. The buckets were bubbling and steaming hot. The shattered sucrose people faded to a hint of white light and fell back into the steaming buckets. In no time, sucrose people, fresh and dripping in syrup, crawled out of the buckets, took up their bamboo spears and almond shields from the plate, screaming and rushing back into the battlefield. Only when they are bitten to pieces by the wizard and swallowed can those sweet fellows truly shut up. Nicholas said pensively, "That was amazing." Zheng Qing reluctantly left the candy store, often looking back every 3 steps, while deep down contemplating when he would buy a couple of nights to experience the rush himself. The affluent and generous elite wizards of First University are the best customers in the eyes of all merchants in the wizarding world. The youthful and naively innocent students in the school are the best candidates for cultivating loyal customer bases. However, the heavily guarded First University is not a good place for business. Strict security protocols constrain the merchants' logistics, while exorbitant campus rents devour their profits. Yet capital flees from war and disputes. Its nature is timid. Away from the wizarding world of First University, peace seems exceptionally fragile. Any smart demon would not hesitate to expend a few pawns to break the paper-thin defenses of the small markets and plunder the rich spoils within. Thus, under the dual threat of demons and profits, the merchants of the wizarding world choose a compromise. They open markets outside the defensive circle of the 4 institutions of First University. One must admit, this is indeed a good solution. Powerful demons refuse to risk opposing First University to rob a few shops. Weak ones would never risk their lives for a bit of gold by testing the boundaries of First University's defensive circle. As for First University, it does not mind having a few merchants taking shelter under its wings. In fact, many of the school's senior professors hope to use the school's power to protect more weak wizards. As time went by, the markets started by the merchants outside the 4 institutions have decayed in 3 places. The tall walls of Juyo Academy restrict the students' movement, and the diverse resources within the academy make the merchants' products seem insignificant. The deserted entrance gradually led traders to abandon this mediocre market. Atlas students prefer a simple and unencumbered lifestyle, viewing the colorful goods in the market outside the academy as divine trials. When traders realized they weren't making a bronze coin off their goods, but were instead losing money to the monks constantly begging for donations, they quickly abandoned the loss-making market. The market outside of Starry Sky Academy was destroyed time and again during the students' reckless brawls, to the point where the mild-tempered and far-sighted merchants were no longer willing to invest a single bronze coin in this area. Thus, the market in this location went bankrupt. Only Alpha Academy, with its philosophy of freedom, allowed the market to slowly rise outside the castle moat. With the slow passage of time, this small town gradually grew into the only commercialized town affiliated with First University. Following Nicholas, the freshmen were listening to his brief description of Beta Town's history, which was filled with its prosperous atmosphere, and they kept expressing admiration. So who's in charge of this town now? Zheng Qing couldn't help asking. Do the merchants in the town still need to pay taxes? Are there any requirements to open a shop in the town? The town belongs to the school, and the school's labor committee manages the tax collection. Although the school doesn't care about this small amount of tax, rules are rules. Each merchant who opens a shop in town has to pay a jade coin to the school every year. While speaking, Nicholas stopped before a trickster playing poker cards by the roadside. Zheng Qing, deep in thought, also stopped. The scholarship of the public expense students is very limited. According to Thomas, the scholarship was just enough for Zheng Qing to complete his compulsory courses in a regular manner. If he wished to take a few more elective courses, he would need to find a way to raise funds to purchase textbooks and experimental materials, let alone the remedial fee he would have to pay if he failed a compulsory course. Being prepared for rainy days has always been Zheng Qing's motto. He won't wait until the last minute to plan in a rush. Therefore, making money, a topic that seemed relatively far off for other students, began to weigh heavily on his mind. Listening to Nicholas's introduction, Zheng Qing was a bit tempted. If he opened a small shop in town, he might be able to solve his problems fundamentally. Young people are always full of ambition and impulsiveness. He didn't consider the issues of cost, benefits, and other operational matters. He didn't consider what kind of business could generate profit. He didn't even think about whether he had enough capital to start a shop or whether he had time to run it. He simply felt that by opening a small shop, he could have peace of mind. And just like that, he made the cheerful decision. The clinking sound of bronze coins colliding interrupted his train of thought and daydream. Zheng Qing looked up. Nicholas was throwing a handful of bronze coins into the box in front of the trickster. The trickster was standing in a dark corner of the street, with a rusty iron box in front of him. If one didn't look carefully, it would be hard to notice his figure. The passing wizards glanced over the corner and didn't deign to pause on this shadowy figure for a second. He was dressed in an old brown robe with thick patches sewn on the hem, and he wore a pointed hat. His long beard and messy hair hid his face, and all Zheng Qing could see were a pair of focused but unilluminated eyes. He's focused on the playing cards in his hand. The cards are flipping lightly in his fingers, creating layers of afterimages. His fingertips traced rapidly, snapping one note after another. Each snap, a set of cards disappears. Each snap, another stack of cards springs from the emptiness. The crisp collision of bronze coins and the iron box awakened the trickster. He lifted his cloudy eyes to see the tall, thin figure in front of him, putting away all the playing cards. "Merlin bless you, kind sir." The old trickster clumsily performed a wizard salute, his voice filled with excitement and nervousness. Then he clapped his hands together forcefully, and countless playing cards surged out from all directions, stacking in front of Nicholas to form a magnificent castle. "That's what Alpha Castle looks like," a newbie shouted excitedly. The clear snapping sound kept ringing nonstop. The cards collapsed in a splendid manner, then quickly piled up to form another building. "That's Jiuyo Academy," another newbie yelled. "That's the main teaching building, and the Book Mountain Library. The shadow wall in the forecourt, and surrounding walls." The newbies of Jiuyo were thrilled, pointing at the buildings they vaguely remembered. If his craftsmanship is to your satisfaction, you should show appropriate generosity, Nicholas reminded them sulkily from behind. The newbies woke from their dream, generously opening their wallets. The hat in front of the old trickster soon filled up with shiny bronze coins. Clearly, the sight of these bronze coins had startled the old man. The crisp, snapping sound ended abruptly, and Jiuyo Academy collapsed in a roar. "This is the value of your craftsmanship." Nicholas respectfully returned a wizard's salute to the old trickster, then turned and walked away. The other newbies were a bit at a loss. Some newbies clumsily saluted the old man, but more newbies chased after the fast-paced Nicholas. Zheng Qing nodded to the old man in a friendly manner and left quickly. Behind him, the old trickster covered his face, crying silently. Not far away, the guide for the newbies was heard speaking in excited and hurried voice. "The school did not require me to lead you in visiting this street, but I believe that before you start studying, it's necessary to remember something. You are ignorant newbies, so you still retain respect for this craftsman. I hope you remember such respect. I hope even more that you do not forget this respect because of others' gazes. The wizard's world is not only made up of the profound experiments and powerful professors from the top university. There are also many weak wizards and simple tricks. For them, bronze coins are very generous. This small street seemed like a giant dragon just awakened on Gold Mountain, lazily stretching its body. Colorful gemstones slid off it, sparkling with mesmerizing luster. Zheng Qing sipped milk tea from the paper cup, carefully avoiding each pearl. He didn't enjoy the sticky sensation of these things. The other new students were listlessly sprawled on the bar, waiting for their orientation guide to return. Nicholas was queuing for meal numbers at a restaurant nearby. It was said that this restaurant offered the most cost-effective buffet in the whole of Beta Town, and the seating was always tight. "Don't worry, I'm familiar with the restaurant manager. I'll get it sorted out for you." The first-year veteran confidently left after buying each freshman a cup of milk tea. Ding-ling, dang-lang, da-da-da-da. The clear sound of copper bells mixed with the hoof strikes on the paving stones echoed on the street. Zheng Qing lifted his head. A black curled horned sheep, dragging a small four-wheeled wooden cart, was trotting leisurely along the street. A young boy with a mushroom haircut sat in the cart. Turning a corner, there was a small open space. The boy clapped his hands. The black-horned sheep stopped steadily, turning its head to glance at the boy. The boy jumped off the cart and gently patted the black sheep's back. "That little scamp, always sponging off our milk tea." The uncle at the tea shop laughed while scolding, pulled out a large paper cup from behind the counter, and began to prepare the milk tea. "Who is he?" Zheng Qing asked with interest. "Lingua, the youngest student in the first college in nearly a century." The uncle in the tea shop proudly raised his head. "He's also the pride of Beta Town." Xiao Xiao, who had his head buried in his notebook, suddenly looked up and turned to look. Zheng Qing worriedly glanced at his neck. The deep red mark pressed out by the edge of the notebook on his cheek was very noticeable. "He is Lingua." Xiao Xiao opened his notebook and asked hurriedly, "You don't know him?" Zheng Qing was a little surprised. He remembered that on the charter flight, Xiao Xiao had introduced him to the youngest student at First College. "I just knew about him." Xiao Xiao rubbed his face, and the deep red marks on his cheeks quickly faded. The corner of the street. The boy unloaded the saddle from the black sheep's back and propped up the cover of the small four-wheeled cart. A five-tiered makeshift bookshelf appeared in the cold wind of Beta Town streets. He took a brown leather stool from the cart and placed it in front of the bookshelf. Then he sat down with his hands on his knees, his back straight as a rod. "What is he doing?" Zheng Qing was somewhat curious. "Setting up a stall? It's obvious." Xiao Xiao scorned him. "Has he been setting up his stall for a long time?" Zheng Qing looked towards the owner of the tea shop, ignoring Xiao Xiao's ridicule. "For a few years, on and off." "That long? How old is he?" 10, maybe 11 at most, the owner nodded confidently. Zheng Qing looked skeptically at Xiao Xiao. He remembered this watermelon-headed student introducing two 12-year-old students this morning. One was Li Meng, the other was Lingua. Different calendars measure ages differently. He's 11 years old, 12 by East Asian reckoning. Xiao Xiao analyzed seriously. "Where's his family?" The owner of the tea shop paused his work and sighed deeply. His family used to have a Lin family shop in Beta Town, where they sold alchemical items. The shop was an old establishment, well known in the town. 3 years ago, a severe fire demon rampaged through Beta Town, burning more than 10 shops along the way. The Lin family shop was destroyed then. Decades of steadfast business, reduced to rubble in a sweeping fire. His family perished in the fire. The next morning, the wizards who had been battling the blaze all night found Ling was singing amidst the mist-shrouded ruins. Singing? A freshman nearby couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. Yes, he was singing The Joyous Little Frog, which was very popular at the time. The tea shop owner leaned against the counter, his gaze filled with confusion as he looked at the distant boy. He was sitting pristinely on that child's cart, ringing the cart's bell and singing that song over and over again. The exhausted wizards nearly mistook him for a malevolent spirit. Zheng Qing gazed in silence at the boy's small figure, silently sitting at the roadside, ringing his bell, a pang of sourness welling up at his heart at the memory of that sorrowful morning 3 years ago, the children's song piercing through the morning mist. Where does he live now? The school arranged a dormitory for him. Don't dismiss him outright. He's the youngest student to enter the university in the last 300 years. He's highly gifted in alchemy, a true prodigy. It's said that his name appeared in the school's student register 2 years ago, but the headmaster felt Lin Guo was too young, so they postponed his enrollment for 2 years. During these 2 years, the school has provided for his living expenses and helped him study various foundation subjects. It seems he will officially enter school this year. 2 years ago, Zheng Qing felt an even greater wave of sourness washing over him. A freshman of barely 10 years old, in the same year as him. Indeed, a reality more desperate than despair itself. What does he usually sell? Another freshman followed up. Old textbooks and exercise books discarded by senior students. Defective potions and talismans made by students. Some talisman papers, talisman pens, cinnabar, and herbs. He also deals in campus gossip and rumors, private commissions from students, recruitment plans promised by school staff, and so on. His little cart is very famous in the university, and the female students are happy to dispose of these things through him. The tea shop owner looked at the freshman with amusement. Girls really like him. How fascinating. He's amazing. The newcomers laughed and looked at the distant boy, lavishing praise upon him. "Excuse me, could you give a young lad this milk tea?" The tea shop's uncle patted Zheng Qing on the shoulder, sliding a fragrant beverage across the counter from behind it, indicating the child with the stall at the side of the street. The paper cup was a bit hot to the touch. Zheng Qing cradled the cup and jogged to where the boy was with his cart. The boy sat with perfect posture, with a heavy book laid across his knees. Zheng Qing glanced at the tiny letters in the center of the page header. Principles of Alchemy, third-year college. His hand trembled, almost dropping the paper cup. The boy looked up at Zheng Qing, his eyebrows light and his eyes clear and pure. "Hi, this is from the owner of the tea shop." Holding out the paper cup, Zheng Qing presented it to the boy, reminding him, "Be careful, it's hot." The boy closed the heavy book on his lap, placed it aside, and stood up. He bowed slightly and received the milk tea, setting it on the shelf next to his bookcase. "Would you mind watching my stall?" The boy lightly pursed his lips, explaining a bit shyly, "I want to go thank the owner of the tea shop." "Not at all, not at all." Zheng Qing waved his hands in dismissal. Lin Guo meticulously straightened his clothes, adjusted the straps on his shoulders, and headed towards the tea shop. Zheng Qing noticed the blue backpack he was carrying. The pattern on the bag featured Mickey Mouse stretching his neck towards the aroma of milk tea. "This is not for you to drink." Finding it interesting, Zheng Qing moved the milk tea further away. The angry Mickey Mouse pattern hopped around on the backpack, baring its teeth. Unable to resist, Zheng Qing burst into laughter. The black sheep pulling the cart chewed its cud and turned its head to glance at him, a look of utter disdain in its eyes. With reasonable prices and an elegant environment, it is extremely popular among students, so there are perennial shortages of seating. After giving the meal ticket, he'd gotten in line to Xiao. Nicholas disappeared into the crowd on the street again. Apparently, he had other important things to tend to, and let the newcomers dine on their own. This was not a difficult task. The restaurant was just a few tens of meters away from the milk tea shop. The restaurant's decor was fresh and crisp, with green creepers twining around the pillars on both sides of the door and forming a few peculiar characters on them. On the black signboard, there was only one giant white letter I. Once you step through the vine-wrapped door, the hustle and bustle of the street disappears, and your ears are suddenly much clearer. The lighting inside the restaurant was soft, a gentle white light flowing out from somewhere, as relaxing and invigorating as the dawn. The waiters were little elves with verdant wings. They flitted with nimble wings, guiding the newcomers to their seats. Zheng Qing saw an old acquaintance by the seats, Monk Shi Yuan from the plane. The little monk, wearing Atlas's yellow robe, had a lot of food in front of him and was leisurely nibbling on a bun. This made Zheng Qing very happy. The queue in the square and the grouping in the first hall had separated all the newly met friends from the cabin. Besides Xiao, Zheng Qing hadn't had a chance to meet the other freshmen yet. "Where's your freshman guide? Did he also bring you guys here for a meal?" Dropping the cardboard box in his hand, Zheng Qing asked the eager monk Shuyuan. A few restaurant elves curiously inspected the little creatures in the box that looked like molds. We've already finished our tour. It was the senior brother's idea to come to this restaurant. The little monk put down his utensils, chanted a Buddha's name, put his hands together, and answered seriously. Indeed, there were no other Atlas freshmen around Shuyuan. Where's the menu? Zheng Qing looked over at Xiao Xiao. Hello, sir. What can I do for you? A tiny voice sounded in his ear. Zheng Qing was startled and whipped his head around. A little elf, about an inch tall, with 2 pairs of translucent wings and dressed in bright green, was floating beside him. Seemingly surprised at Zheng Qing's reaction, the little elf quickly retreated a few meters, pulled out a card from somewhere behind her, and hid behind it, only exposing her head while regarding him tremblingly. She talks. Zheng Qing stared in amazement at the little elf, then looked down at the little creature in his cardboard box. How would the serving elves serve guests if they didn't talk? Xiao Xiao retorted. Isn't it the same as them? Zheng Qing pointed to the sleeping elf in the box, with a surprised look on his face. Serving elves belong to the magical creatures, alchemical creatures, elves, winged eye, serving elf families. They were created by wizards, specifically to handle catering services. Although they are more approachable than their peers, they are still fundamentally timid creatures that are easily frightened. Xiao Xiao took a sip of water and lazily flipped through her notebook. This was also the concept of the wizard who created them. During a meal, it's best to be quiet, or else, if you scare away the serving elves, you should prepare for hunger. The little elf seemed to have collected herself as well, refloating in front of Zheng Qing. With a few touches in midair, she created a clear menu and nervously asked, "What can I get for you?" Their voices were a bit piercing, but they were pleasant to listen to. The menu is quite extravagant. Zheng Qing looked at the little serving elf, blushing as he smiled. The menu was filled with an extraordinary variety of foods, from fruits, cold dishes, and salads, to all kinds of soups varying in light and heavy tastes, and in all kinds of hot dishes, whether fried, stewed, or steamed, followed by various desserts and drinks. From start to finish, everything was organized clearly and could be easily understood. Let's start with some appetizing fruits. I especially like apples. Grapes are also good. Oh, and watermelon as well. Zheng Qing cautiously ordered a fruit platter. For the drink, I like a bowl of millet pumpkin porridge. Since it's self-serve, I won't be shy then. I'll have the small pan-fried steak, the hand-grabbed lamb, and a bit of stewed meat and scallops. Zheng Qing looked at the lifelike pictures, swallowing his saliva. It's too greasy. Let's have some lettuce. I also want some shredded radishes. I'll eat slowly. Remember to bring me 3 cream puffs later. Estimating his appetite, Zheng Qing reluctantly let go of the menu. As for the cutlery, I'm used to using chopsticks. As he said this, Zheng Qing saw the large steak and blinked. But do leave me a set of a knife and fork. Every time he ordered something, the little elf would quickly speak the name, creating a corresponding 3D image for Zheng Qing to confirm. After confirmation, the little elf would sing out a beautiful and pleasant spell, placing the dish in front of Zheng Qing on the table. Once all the dishes were served, the elf cast 2 spells in succession, and Zheng Qing immediately felt a lot fresher on his hands and face. He surmised that this must be a cleaning spell. You sing beautifully. Thinking of the fright he had caused earlier, Zheng Qing wanted to make amends and offered, tentatively, "Can you accept gifts?" As he spoke, he generously held a silver coin in front of him. "Thank you very much for your generosity." The little elf floated joyfully to Zheng Qing's nose and lightly kissed his nose. No rush, no rush." Zheng Qing waved his hands awkwardly and glanced to the side. He was slightly troubled at heart. Does this count as losing his first kiss? No one paid attention to this minor incident, and the newcomers were already eagerly tucking into their meals. Zheng Qing used fork to hold his steak as he was cutting, and curiously turned to the little monk at his side. "Does your class have girls? Do you have difficulty communicating with them?" "Difficulty? Yeah, like religious prohibitions and such." "Ahmed Ba, you're very considerate. Men and women are all mere skins in this world, hence my mind is pure, my spirit is tranquil, even if they're asterisk, 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 asterisk. What's the harm? The little monk nearly choked Zheng Qing with his few words. You worship Buddha. Others worship without temples or churches. Is that an issue? Zheng Qing took a piece of stewed meat, put it in bread, took a satisfying large bite. A stream of savory juice ran down the corner of his mouth, and he mumbled, I don't seem to have seen these places in the school. There is absolutely no need to worry about it. Where the heart is, the faith is also. We hold the tokens of our faith in our hearts, under the sky and upon the earth, regardless of where we are. What does the place of worship matter? Monk Shi Yuan looked at Zheng Qing's satisfied expression, stirring the vegetables and tofu in front of him with his chopsticks. Do you want some? Zheng Qing blinked, pointing at his mouth. Didn't Buddha once say, alcohol passes through our guts and meat through our bodies, while Buddha sits in our hearts? That's Buddha, not me. Shi Yuan sighed. Excuses, if you want to find them, there's always some. But we live in this world. We should have some responsibility. Those who cannot even uphold their own beliefs are just shells. Zheng Qing took a large sip of the rice porridge, his eyes tearing up from the heat. Monk Shi Yuan misunderstood and happily said, So it seems you are a person with great wisdom. Zheng Qing nodded in agreement, not bothering to explain. After finishing their meal, Zheng Qing and Xiao Xiao departed early, wanting to spend a bit more time wandering around the street. People surged along the street in the evening. The figures of several robed wizards breezed past them, pushing the pair aside. The road was wide enough. Was there any need for such high-handedness? Zheng Qing frowned, casting a glance at several students from the Alpha Academy. He curled his lip in disdain, but kept silent. A black trim was clearly visible around the collar of the white robes. They were second-year veterans from the Alpha Academy. Xiao Xiao kept her head bowed, her watermelon head buried in the shadow of her black-bound notebook, also remaining silent. But after not walking very far, another disheartening event unfolded. The Alpha veteran who had bumped into them earlier blocked Lin Guo's small bookstore layer. Lin Guo, clutching his double-shoulder backpack, leaned against the black sheep with curved horns, nervously eyeing several towering seniors. A pattern of a mouse baring its teeth on the backpack was bouncing around angrily. Several white-robed Alpha students stood around, vaguely encircling him. A skinny Alpha veteran walked up to Lin Guo and handed him an envelope. There was not a single character on the white envelope sealed with black wax. Lin Guo bit his lower lip, his hands tightly gripping the straps of his backpack, not taking the envelope. A handsome young man with golden hair among the white-robed veterans spoke with an amused smile. These are the AAA admission documents. As we've heard, you found a copy of Goebel's Guide to the Valorization of Metals in Juyo Academy's old book pile, which could be used as a gift for the Duke. Lin Guo took a step backward and remained silent. Passers-by on the street gradually stopped to watch, seemingly curious about the developments. The tea shop owner and some local residents peered out from their shops, casting uneasy glances at Lin Guo. What is this AAA admission document? Zheng Qing quietly asked Xiao Xiao. Alpha Appreciation is an extreme talent-promoting student club at Alpha Academy. It's also known as the AAA Club because there are 3 as in its name. It's one of the large clubs at the school, Xiao Xiao explained quickly. It seems this club is planning to make a preemptive move to induct Lin Guo. It's just an invitation, then. Zheng Qing sighed in relief. He almost thought someone was causing trouble for Lin Guo. Xiao Xiao sneered. Given Lin Guo's talents, any of the top clubs in the First Academy would send him an invitation. The AAA Club even plans to take that book by Goebel. Greedy. Is the book valuable? Goebel was a renowned wizard in the 13th century, famous for his alchemy. His book, Guide to the Valorization of Metals, was only published once. For an alchemist, this book can't merely be described as expensive. Zheng Qing burped, feeling a little sick. It was the first time he'd seen someone describe blatant robbery so elegant. The young boy in front of the black sheep raised his head, glanced at the handsome young man, then quickly lowered his head again. he shouted in a high-pitched voice. "I won't deal with you." Murmurs of conversation stirred among the surrounding bystanders. The smile faded from the face of the blonde, white-robed veteran. He glanced at his companion. "Why make this so complicated?" One of the muscular, white-robed veterans seemed impatient. He stretched out a hand to grab the young boy's backpack, intimidating him. "Sign the word. Take the book. Does he have any objections?" The handsome blonde veteran held a glass of red wine in his hand, subtly swaying it under the light, deeply engrossed. He seemed completely oblivious to his partner's rough behavior. Linguist stubbornly hugged his backpack, his gaze fixed on the mouse bouncing around wildly, not uttering a word. "Why isn't anyone intervening?" Zheng Qing furrowed his brow, looking to either side of the street. Many bystanders watched with cold eyes. The tea shop owner and several locals watched from a distance, their faces reflecting their unease, yet no one stepped forward. "The merchants in Beta Town dare not provoke the students of Alpha Academy," Xiao Xiao said calmly. "Students from other academies do not want to interfere in Alpha Academy's internal disputes." Zheng Qing understood. Beta Town had gradually formed due to its attachment to Alpha Academy. Hence, Alpha students have always had more say in this small town. Whether it's Lin Guo or the other students in white robes, they are all internal affairs of the Alpha Academy. In fact, others do have no business interfering. Zheng Qing hesitated and sighed slightly. Indeed, it's not like it's a Jiuyou Academy student being bullied, so there is absolutely no psychological burden to walk away. He comforted himself. Moreover, those Alpha students surrounding him looked tall and fierce, and his relationship with Lin Guo was merely a casual acquaintance. Even the owner of the milk tea shop didn't intervene. He could also quietly leave. In broad daylight, these people should not make any drastic moves. Smack! The crisp slap sound sent Zheng Qing's self-consolation flying. "You filthy rat, dare to bite me." The skinny Alpha student grabbed Lin Guo's hair and harshly yanked his backpack. The Mickey knocking out from the boy's shoulder bag just bit him hard. The blonde in the white robe frowned slightly. "Don't be rough." "Yes, I am very sorry." The skinny student then quickly stepped back 2 steps, apologized to the blonde in the white robe with a 90-degree bow. Zheng Qing narrowed his eyes. His impression of these few Alpha veterans had plummeted. Then he raised an eyebrow. A familiar figure appeared in his field of vision. It was Bluebird, the silent and handsome boy from a plane. He lifted his head slightly, his gaze hollow, steps wavering, his blue gown fluttering. He just marched straight ahead in a daze, seeming to pay no attention to the Alpha Academy students not far in front of him. Stumbling backward, a tall and thin Alpha veteran was hit by the sudden figure and nearly fell to the ground. The reactions of the other white robes were all dramatically intense. The biggest and stoutest one roared, his muscles rolling, his body suddenly swelled. Then he stomped, making the spectators sway. The skinny wizard who had handed the envelope to Lin Guo disappeared into the lightly raised dust with the tremor, while the handsome blonde boy with one hand on his chest, the other hand steadily raised his wine glass, slightly shaken, expressing a clear doubt and curiosity in his eyes, as if asking who this suddenly intruding stranger was. Then he noticed Bluebird's smooth collar and sleeve cuffs, smirked. Bluebird ignored him. He stood next to Lin Guo, the sword in his arms already held in his hand. The robust Alpha veteran behind him cracked his fingers. Sound popped. The skinny white-robed figure flickered like a ghost in the dark. Bluebird cocked his head, ignoring the threats up close. "Bluebird!" He casually stretched out his hand towards Lin Guo. Zheng Qing laughed, sighed. "That guy, Bluebird. My name is Lin Guo. I'm a freshman. Nice to meet you." Lin Guo's breath was slightly hurried. His eyes were red, sniffing his nose, loud with a nasal voice while he firmly grabbed the hand and shook it vigorously. "Where is your guardian?" Bluebird frowned. "I don't have one," Lin Guo said in a low voice, then raised his head, loudly uttered, "I am the guardian." Bluebird ruffled Lin Guo's mushroom-like hair and said a rare sentence. "You are as old as my younger brother, but much stronger than he is." Lin Guo hugged his bag, giggling foolishly. "Just like now." Both of them sensed an unsettling atmosphere slowly pervading the air. Xiao Xiao carried his own black-cased notebook and silently took a few steps farther away. He hated trouble. Meanwhile, Zheng Qing reached into his gray cloth bag. He was not afraid of trouble. However, his only concern was that he barely had any combat talismans in his gray cloth bag. Throughout his long journey of practicing writing symbols, Zheng Qing spent most of his time reviewing the symbols. He had been taught very few complete talismans by his teacher, most of which were tranquility charms for peace of mind. The only thing that might have some effect on these veteran second-year students, he guessed, was the suppression charm. Zheng Qing took out a talisman scroll and began to tear off the pages of fully drawn talisman paper, one by one. This was a suppression charm talisman scroll, as well as Zheng Qing's usual practice book. All the talismans in the scroll had been drawn and could be activated at any time. To him, the talisman papers were just the large characters he traced every day. As long as he had a scroll to tear, he would always have some. In the center of the square, the golden-haired veteran in the white robe squinted and raised the high wine glass in his hand, giving Bluebird a nod, then turned to Lin Guo and said slowly, in a proud but restrained tone, "Accept my invitation, and you will win the friendship of Sir Friedman." Friedman? Some of the students watching seemed to recognize the name, whispering one after another. The previously furious milk tea shop owner and several other locals hesitated and returned to their shops. Seemed like this guy was famous. Zheng Qing was tearing off the pages and glanced at Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao buried his head in his black-cased notebook and made no sound. "I refuse." Lin Guo once again shouted his refusal. The white-robed veteran with golden hair stopped smiling and looked impassively at the young boy. The atmosphere in the square suddenly froze. Bluebird patted Lin Guo's shoulder and said very seriously, "You're very brave. I approve of you." Lin Guo looked at Bluebird, his eyes sparkling, and nodded vigorously. "Remember, not everyone can earn my approval." Bluebird lifted his head proudly, leaning on his sword. The blonde white-robed veteran's face darkened, and the high wine glass in his hand was crushed into pieces with a pop. Scattered pieces of glass fell from his hand, flickering with an unsettling glow under the dim street light. The other students from Alpha began to slowly circle around Bluebird, looking at him with ill intent. The situation was on the verge of exploding. The onlookers very consciously took a few steps back. "Hey, Bluebird, have you seen where Shi Yuan went?" Zheng Qing shouted loudly, hands in his robe, clutching the talismans he had just torn off. He walked very casually to the corner behind the tall, white-robed veteran, looking around as if looking for someone. Lin Guo looked at Zheng Qing happily. Bluebird glanced at Zheng Qing. His lips moved, but in the end, he could only muster a faint smile. Zheng Qing looked calm, but was internally cursing in frustration, imagining the beaten-up face he would have later. "Oh, I see him. A medium-built, sturdy boy with a red face and somewhat tan skin, sporting a crew cut, pushed aside the people around him and stood behind another white-robed student. He casually waved at Zheng Qing, revealing black boxing gloves on his hands. The monk seems to have gone to eat vegetarian food. It was Zhang Qing. A bright smile bloomed on Zheng Qing's face. "What a coincidence. My bad luck." Zhang Qing clenched his boxing gloves tightly. His face distressed, he muttered, "Why does something bad happen every time I meet you?" "What?" Zheng Qing didn't hear clearly. "I mean, if we get involved in this and brother finds out, he'll break our legs." Zhang Qing glared at him threateningly. More students were gathering on the street, everyone curiously watching them. A new red robe, a blue robe, and a white robe. Challenging a veteran white robe student together? Seems interesting. "Ah, sorry. I really didn't see you there." An embarrassed female voice sounded. "I'm so sorry, really sorry." Zheng Qing turned his head, blinked, and couldn't help but laugh. The thin, white-robed youth who had just disappeared into the air was crouching on the ground, hugging his legs and grimacing in pain. And a tall girl in a red skirt, black high boots, with auburn wavy hair and big black eyes, was clumsily standing at the side apologizing. "I'm so sorry. I was playing cards and didn't see anyone in front. The girl apologized with a guilty face, but the light blue playing cards in her hand kept flapping, showing no sign of stopping. No, it's okay. The skinny white robe, gritting his teeth and gasping for breath, tilted his head weakly and stared at the dazzling blue card in the girl's hand. Pervert! The card-playing girl screamed, one hand blocking her skirt, the other holding her cards, and she kicked out hard. The skinny alpha boy covered his lower body, his eyes bulging, his mouth agape, gasping silently. The onlookers shivered in unison. Zheng Qing swallowed, and the shock of hair on his head quickly sagged. It was his eyes that were wandering. The girl pouted her lips, still looking apologetic, but the blue playing cards kept fluttering in her hand like a windmill. "You okay, buddy?" A somewhat dull voice rang out from his side. "Can someone lend a hand? He seems to have fallen pretty hard." Zheng Qing followed the sound. A tall blue-robed boy was supporting the skinny boy who had just been hit by the blue bird, dragging one of his arms and settling him on the side, muttering about going to the school hospital, but his eyes kept glancing at the center of the field, his feet not moving an inch. Several blue robes crowded around the skinny boy, yelling. Looking around, Zheng Qing grinned and smiled stupidly, his mind blank, but in his heart, an unusual impulse was stirring, roaring. Lingua cried loudly. Blue Bird lightly patted his head. The golden-haired alpha veteran smirked and slowly waggled his index finger, laughing. "Although I commend your actions, this is an internal matter of alpha. Aren't you guys crossing the line?" He emphasized the word schoolmates. "Beat it, jerk. Fight if you want to fight, or piss off." Zhang Jixian's face was slightly red and becoming brighter, his hands clutching and unclutching, shouting impatiently. Zheng Qing felt a moment of exhilaration. The blonde senior's face stiffened, then darkened, although his long-standing propriety made him swallow the swear words in his mouth. That gloomy face showed his attitude more clearly than ever. After a moment of silence, he finally asked slowly and firmly, "So, you guys have decided to tarnish the glory of Sir Friedman?" "Who is Friedman?" Zhang Jixian shouted impatiently. "Don't mention Friedman, acting like he's your dad or something." The onlooking students burst into laughter. Several blue robes couldn't resist stirring the pot, cheering loudly on the side. The blonde alpha student didn't expect to be insulted like this. His face turned red, and he trembled with anger. Pop, pop, pop! The street lamps within several tens of meters burst one after another. The dim sky returned. The spectators screamed one after another. A clear and low voice from the blonde-white robe hovered in the air. "I, Arthur Ness, on behalf of Sir Friedman, regret your unfriendly acts." The stoutest white robe moved at the sound. His eyes were bloodshot. He roared, stomped heavily, and swung his fist towards Zhang Jixian. "Great!" Zhang Jixian laughed, swung his fists, and welcomed him fiercely. Zheng Qing's tense nerve suddenly broke, and he tossed the talisman in his hand into the middle of the field, aiming at Arthur Ness not far away. Another tall and thin alpha student spread his hands, floated in the air, and muttered words. Two flames slowly emerged between his hands. Blue Bird furrowed his brow, caressed his hand a few times, but eventually didn't pull out his longsword. Instead, he simply lifted the blade and pointed it forward. Next to him, Xiao Xiao, who had been burying his face in his notebook, finally lifted his head. He sighed and adjusted his glasses. "Don't pull out the law book. Solve this with your fists." Watermelon Head yelled, waving his black hardshell notebook and rushing up. The Alpha's veterans, with their noses bruised and faces swollen, were lying in various awkward positions on the ground, pinned down by a pile of yellow talismans, unable to move. After a brief investigation, the captain of the patrol team notified the on-duty professors from each academy, without any expression, to pick up their students. "Will we get into trouble?" Zheng Qing asked worriedly at Xiao Xiao. "Thinking about that now." Xiao Xiao snorted, adjusting his black-framed glasses, the cracks visible on the frame. Zheng Qing looked at the others. Lingua was hiding behind his own black pan Anglo-Nubian goat and scathed. Even though he was the catalyst for the conflict, none of the sophomores in white robes really attacked him. Bluebird had a black circle on his face and a split lip. However, these minor injuries added an alternative charm to his handsome face. The girls watching on the street stared at him unblinkingly, whispering to each other, eyes sparkling. And the boys around were eyeing the short-skirted beauty with burgundy wavy hair. Zheng Qing was no exception. He had noticed this beauty. On the private jet, this beauty sat opposite Monk Shi Yuan and slept all the way. He had regretted not being able to start a conversation with her before. Maybe now is a good chance to get to know her? He licked his lips, hesitated. The girl you can't take your eyes off is a gypsy witch, an exchange student from Europe. Xiao Xiao removed his glasses to examine the cracks on them, in a tone that was impassive as an ancient well without waves. No wonder her card tricks are so dazzling. Zheng Qing muttered, shifting his gaze. Gypsy witches are a very old branch in the lineage of European witches, skilled in fortune-telling and herbalism. They are elusive and have a very narrow circle of acquaintances, often wandering between European countries, interacting only with a few wizard towers. They seldom appear in the Wizard Council. In fact, I'm quite curious there's a gypsy witch among this year's freshmen. Freshman! Zheng Qing's gaze was once again drawn to the graceful figure. He had almost mistook the witch for an assistant teacher of the school just now. Unfortunately, she came to the first university as an exchange student to study for only a year. If you have any ideas, I suggest you proceed cautiously. I see. Zheng Qing sounded regretful. The beauty with burgundy hair took out an ID. After checking by the patrol team, they let her go. Perhaps that was the privilege of being an exchange student. Professors from Starry Sky and Alpha Academies hastily came and took away their respective students. The onlookers had long scattered. In a moment's effort, there were only 3 freshmen from Jiuyou Academy left on the street, feeling the chill. After more than half an hour, a chubby male professor finally rushed over. Zheng Qing remembered this professor, who had assigned groups to new students in the first hall. Zheng Qing remembered this professor's surname was in. I'm terribly sorry. With the new students coming in today, there's a lot to attend to. Thank you for your patience, Professor, and shook the patrol team leader's hand vigorously. That's not a problem. Safety first. After brief greetings, the patrol team leader asked Professor to sign on the accident handling form. Before leaving, the always somber-faced patrol team leader solemnly warned the newcomers. Perhaps the outside trends are more fashionable, but I have to emphasize the first university, especially Jiuyou Academy, is a traditional school. If you want a duel, apply to the student council and then draw your law book under the supervision of the teaching assistants. This is the way according to the rules. Otherwise, keep your hands firmly in your pockets, got it? The freshmen nodded their heads, speechless. When no one else was around, Professor, who was always wearing a warm smile, finally changed his expression. Never seen it before. Never seen it before. Daring to fight with a senior before even entering the classroom door. If this carries on for a year or so, it would be unbearable. There has never been such a reckless student in Jiuyou Academy. It's absolutely unbelievable. You should go to Starry Sky Academy, which accepts such thoughtless students. Zheng Qing gently held his stomach, continuously drawing breath. He felt like his ribs had broken. He was struck by a powerful punch from a tall Alpha student just now, and though he had blocked it with his arm, the wild force had sent him rolling several times. Seeing this, Professor stepped forward, felt and examined Zheng Qing's abdomen, which caused him to grit his teeth in pain. Minor issue, it's only a fracture, not a break. No need for such an expression as if you're dying. Professor said with a stern face, pulling out his law book and slapped it several times on Zheng Qing's stomach. If you can't handle it next time, don't show off. Couldn't you have sought help from the patrol team? Who do you think you are? Fortunately, they were only second-generation Alpha students. Otherwise, if the Starry Sky Academy brats had stepped in, you would be lying in the school hospital by now. A cool current flowed along with the rhythm of the law book strikes, quickly dissipating the pain. taking a few light and then several deep breaths. Zheng Qing expanded his chest and instantly looked at Professor and with admiration in his eyes. There's a lot you still have to learn. You're young. Don't be so impulsive. Everything can be discussed. The professor was pleased with this kind of gaze. His tone softened a lot. The troublemakers wisely remained silent, just nodding repeatedly. You rookies are lucky that you didn't recklessly pull out your own law books. Otherwise, the patrol team would tear them up instantly, ruining your college life. Professor N's tone became even more soothing. They didn't want to pull out law books, but rather did not know how to use them. Zheng Qing muttered quietly in his heart. If his law book had a few more spells recorded, he wouldn't need to cast talisman scrolls or throw punches. However, looking at it from another angle, throwing punches was more satisfying. Despite this, you have still violated the school's prohibition. The school will notify your counselors. The specific notice of punishment will be announced at the first class meeting on the weekend. What usually happens? Asked Zhang Jiexan, looking rather nervous at Professor N, a stark contrast to his earlier wildness. Now you know to be afraid? The professor glared at him fiercely. Zhang Jiexan smiled apologetically, scratching his head. Maybe they'll have you sort books at Book Mountain Library, or weed and remove insects at 100 Her Gardens. Maybe the school work committee will have you help clean up the silt at the bottom of the Linbell Lake. Or your counselor will directly assign you a review report of tens of thousands of words, making you memorize the university's first code of conduct 10 times. Anything is possible. The plump professor shrugged, looking sympathetically at the newcomers. But before all the punishments, there's a 3-level warning from the college. You're definitely getting that. What are the consequences of a 3-level warning? Asked Zhang Jiexan in a low voice. The most direct one, your sophomore promotion credits will need to be about 10% higher than the normal requirements. Professor N glared at them fiercely. If this year's passing rate of our school is affected because of you guys, humph. We couldn't just stand by and watch, mumbled Zheng Qing. I've heard about it. Professor N nodded comfortingly, his expression softened somewhat. It was those alpha boys who were not fair in their actions. And you guys did pretty good. You didn't lose. Though it was a bit of a surprise attack, you still won in the end. A few freshmen from Jiuyou suppressed the seniors of Alpha. The school is going to be buzzing in a few days. Thinking of something, the round-faced professor showed a schadenfreude expression. Zheng Qing nodded enthusiastically. Zhang Jiexan next to him also burst into laughter. Xiao Xiao didn't say anything, but he looked up from his notebook, watching the professor keenly. I'm not done. Somewhat regretful for letting the news slip, Professor N saw the smug faces of the boys. He immediately lost his temper, lifted his law book, hit them each once on the head. Although it won't deduct your credits, in fact, you guys don't have any credits to be deducted. But you need to be prepared mentally. Any punishment is possible, especially for you tender rookies, stirring up this kind of trouble as soon as you came. What about those alphas? Each student will only be dealt with by their own academy. Alpha is notorious for protecting their own, so don't have high hopes. Today was the first day of August. By all accounts, there should be no moon in the sky. Zheng Qing had his eyes fixated on the round, silver, celestial body in the sky, ignoring the chattering of Nicholas in front of him. Professor N, having entrusted the 3 troublesome, new students to the guidance of the newcomer, left in a hurry. Upon turning around, Nicholas, who had previously shown an angry face, softened his tone. This incident is not that serious. At worst, you'll have to spend another year in the first year. It's not a big deal. Zheng Qing coughed a couple of times and looked down at the little elf napping soundly in the cardboard box, and couldn't help but feel a little disheartened. To a veteran third-year student who's still in their first year, having to spend 2 years in the first year is not a big deal. However, to a new student who believes he is upholding justice, this punishment feels a bit distressing. Nicholas consoled him. Alpha lost its true meaning 100 years ago, carrying laughable arrogance and doing ridiculous things. You are the future of Jiuyou Academy. What you need now is a warm dormitory and a comfortable bed. Stop overthinking all this. Zheng Qing, holding the cardboard box, yawned. Why are my eyes always filled with tears? because I've yawned too deeply." He rubbed his eyes, reflecting on this. The long day seemed to finally be coming to an end. As Nicholas had mentioned, he desperately needed a comfortable bed now. At the end of the pedestrian street, there was a grand gate carved with intricate patterns. This gate must be quite old. A thick layer of moss covered the bricks at the base of the gate. The paint on the gate frame was peeling and faded. It looked like a patient with vitiligo. Every student who passed through the archway would hear an unsettling sigh, accompanied by a gust of cold wind. This gate is a shortcut from Beta Town to the dormitories of the 4 academies, but this corridor is one way. You can only return to your dormitory via this gate. You cannot come directly to Beta Town from your dormitory. Zheng Qing stood at the entrance, peering inside. The campus under the moonlight was serene. Green grass and clear lakes, willows hanging gently. Groups of students were leisurely strolling around, enjoying the ease of being under the moon. In the Spirit Beast Park, those little animals that did not want to sleep were chasing and playing on the grass. From time to time, there were bursts of frantic arguing. It looked like a large park. There was not a single dormitory building in sight. "Here, take out your identity cards." Nicholas beckoned them, pointing to an iron door next to the archway. "Behind this door is the corridor of the dormitory. After swiping your card, you will directly enter your own dormitory." New students' dorms are randomly allocated. The school says this helps to cultivate a spirit of unity among students. Zheng Qing hurriedly digs out the silver card from his robe. Of course, there is more than one entrance to the dormitory building. As the books say, while studying here, you need to have a keen eye for discovery. Zheng Qing leaned in, curiously examining the side door. The iron door was grayish-white, almost blending with the faded wall. It was easy to not notice its existence. In the center of the door, there was a small hole, inside which a bluish-green creature about the size of a palm was squatting with its eyes closed, resting. This unique creature seemed to be made of bronze. Its body had green scars. It looked like a lion, but with horns on its head and scale armor on its body. Currently, it had its head resting on its front paws, making a rumbling sound from its throat. The dormitory supervisor of the First University, Grandpa Niwu. Nicholas pointed at the blue creature and introduced them to the new students. "This is your first meeting. Say hello to Grandpa Niwu first." "Hello, Grandpa Niwu," responded the new students timidly, looking at the unique blue creature with curiosity. The creature lifted its eyelids, lazily glanced at the newcomers, but did not respond. Nicholas took out a reddish-yellow pill from his pocket and handed it over with a smile. Upon seeing this, the creature's eyes widened, a red light flashed within them, and it stood up happily, extending its long tongue to roll the pill into its mouth. Then its body shook violently, and thick smoke billowed out of its eyes, nose, and ears. The smoke was dense, but it was odorless. The blue creature opened its mouth wide and whooshed, inhaling all the rising smoke into its belly, smacking its lips as if it's still wanting more. Nicholas hurriedly handed over his identity card. The creature's eyes flashed red again. It casually nodded its head, hitting the sphere under its paw heavily, and the iron gate made a click sound. "Do you know how to go in now?" Nicholas pulled open the iron door and looked at the new students. "Grandpa Niwu is our dormitory supervisor. Thousands of students in the whole school live in the dormitory behind him. You only need to remember, wherever you see Grandpa Niwu, you can return to your own dormitory. Those yellow pills are made from waste material from the potion class, and a bronze coin can get a big bag of it. It's not difficult. Its only function is to produce a large amount of waste smoke. Grandpa Niwu loves this stuff." Nicholas stood at the entrance, urging, "Hurry up. Grandpa Niwu's patience is limited." The new students hurriedly squeezed through the narrow iron door. Zheng Qing held the cardboard box, careful to not get squeezed. Behind the door was a silver hallway with black handles on both sides. Under normal circumstances, you could directly push open your dormitory door just by showing your card in front of Grandpa Niwu. But sometimes when there are a lot of people, like today, you need Grandpa Niwu's help to open more doors. Look at your number, find your dormitory door, just push it open and you can enter. Nicholas had already opened a door. He protruded half of his body out and called the confused new students, "Hurry up! Although this corridor can sustain for a while, Grandpa Niwu's patience is limited. Be careful not to get thrown out by him." Zheng Qing looked at the number 403 embedded on the yellowish door frame and compared it with the identity card in his hand. He took a deep breath and pushed hard. Upon pushing the door, he saw a small, barren gray hallway. Just as he was stunned, a silver door on the opposite wall was suddenly pushed open. A familiar watermelon head also stuck his head in. The two were silent for a moment. Xiao Xiao nodded and entered the room. "Xiao Xiao." Zheng Qing looked at him in disbelief, turned his head, and looked at the side. A thin figure had half of his body disappeared into the silver hallway behind him. This place probably uses a spatial extension and resonance spell. Xiao Xiao adjusted his glasses, frustratedly took out his black notebook, and said, "There have been quite a lot of technical changes in the first university in recent years. It wasn't this troublesome to enter the dormitory when my father came here. I'm just curious that you share a dorm with me." Zheng Qing drooped his head, humming listlessly. On the wooden door at the end of the gray hallway hangs a small plate with the number 403. Upon pushing the door open, a panting voice rang in their ears. "Ha! Are you? Ha! The last two roommates." The black stains mixed with brown rust revealed an air of antiquity. Below, there was a thick indigo carpet, soft and comforting to step on. Each corner of the room had wide, six-pillar beds. The blackish-purple bed frames were carved with intricate patterns and draped with crimson curtains. A massive desk stood in the center of the dorm room. A golden square-shaped table with 4 corresponding black round chairs stayed still in the center of the room. The only decoration on the smooth, reflective tabletop was a potted, withering daisy, its orange petals listlessly drooping over the edge of the pot. The room was quite spacious, but there was only one balcony and one window. A wooden sliding door separated the balcony and the dorm, which was currently wide open. Outside, a hefty figure in a red robe was straining to stretch. At the sound of the door opening, he groaned to stand upright, poking his head into the room. "Ah, you've all arrived? I was wondering what kind of people my remaining roommates would be. My name is Shin Schmidt-Bayer. You can just call me Exine." The chubby guy enthusiastically waved, chattering at the two people who had just entered the room. Now I can finally breathe a sigh of relief. The thought of staying so long in a room with Dylan nearly sent me over the edge. Exine Fat Man wildly swept his robust arm back and forth, his voice strong and clear. Zheng Qing looked at this boisterous fellow and involuntarily thought of a story from the Great Ming Pavilion. Before he could delve into his thoughts, the red curtain of the nearby six-pillar bed was pushed aside, and a figure climbed down from the bed into their sight. Dylan O'Brien Tabbitt. The boy had black curls, green eyes, a fair complexion, and a well-proportioned body. He extended his hand and spoke slowly and deeply. "Student of the Starry Sky Academy, in Potion Class 08-1. Zheng Qing observed his blue robe and broke into a bright smile. "You are the second new student I met from the Starry Sky Academy. I thought the dorm was reserved for Juyo Academy students." He reached out to Dylan, pointing at Exine Fat Man, who was crowding into the room from the balcony, and asked curiously, "What did he mean just now? He's probably worried about his weight." Dylan grasped Zheng Qing's hand with a friendly shake, his lips twitching upwards. "I am a mixed blood, born of a werewolf and the blood race. I'm often not the best choice as a roommate for many wizards." Zheng Qing's hand stiffened as he held Dylan's arm. He began to understand Exine Fat Man's discomfort. "I thought you would have your own designated dorm." Images of werewolves under the round moon and the blood-sucking vampires hunting in the dark of night flashed in his mind, making him twitch involuntarily. He quickly apologized and said, "I didn't mean anything by it." "No problem. I was worried that the new roommates might start throwing garlic at me or spraying holy water in my face. Your reactions are much better than I expected." Tipping his head, Dylan continued with a nonchalant smile, "The school infirmary will provide me with special potions. Normally, you can treat me just like a regular person. At special times, the school will arrange a quiet room for us. You don't have to worry about safety." To be precise, he is a chubby tomcat, covered in yellow-white stripes, with a pair of deep blue eyes. More importantly, he is a spiritual cat. There's no fundamental difference between a spiritual cat and a demon cat. It's just that spiritual cats are more friendly to wizards. Tuan Tuan's everyday life is straightforward and contented. His favorite thing to do is devour a juicy, golden, roasted chicken leg, then stretch out lazily and nap on the windowsill, purring away. When in the mood, he doesn't mind waddling leisurely on the roof tiles, engaging in deep and friendly exchanges with his less evolved female peers, his fluffy body jiggling as he walks. As a spiritual cat with various interests, he doesn't mind at all when the blossoming young girls in the academy stimulate his senses with their fragrant bodies. However, as a noble spiritual cat, he simply can't tolerate these fledgling tricksters acting up in front of a genuine four-legged cat like him. At the moment, he's faced with such a challenge. There were some new students out on the balcony. This wasn't an uncommon occurrence. Tuan Tuan didn't mind it. Usually, these tenderfoot chicks would just marvel a few times, sigh a few times, then return to their dorm doing what students usually do. But these new students were a bit different. Are they taking me for one of those unenlightened wildcats? An irritated Tuan Tuan stroked his chin whiskers and narrowed his blue eyes. In front of him, a little fish folded from talisman paper was wiggling its tail, floating in midair. How dare they make a fake fish? This is outrageous. Tuan Tuan stared at the small fish flitting in front of him and stroked his whiskers in annoyance. What should I do? He's not taking the bait. What should we do? The students on the balcony were also puzzled by this dilemma. Why not try chicken leg? Xin Fat Man seemed to have an idea and reluctantly fished out a USB drive. Cats are supposed to eat fish. Zheng Qing muttered, dispiritedly withdrew the little fish he'd painstakingly made from talisman paper. Xin Fat Man plugged the flash drive into a chunky watch, randomly hit a few buttons, and a virtual screen sprang into midair, appearing before everyone's eyes. What's this? Zheng Qing curiously glanced at the screen. The storage space of the Qingquan 5.03 series, Xiao Xiao explained, the currently popular fifth-generation storage technology, created by combining advanced magic like virtual manifestation and multidimensional overlaying with traditional alchemy techniques, such as void mustard seed. It's easy to use, portable, and compatible with the mundane world's development, quite popular in recent years. Xin Fat Man nodded and prodded at the virtual screen. The virtual screen displayed 5 folders named Clothes, Food, Housing, Transport, and Utility. Then, Xin Fat Man opened the folder labeled Food and found the favorite category within its subdirectory. Inside it, there was another directory titled Most Favorite, from which he located the file named Chicken Leg from an extensive list of options. Upon selecting it, 5 images of chicken legs appeared in midair. Oh, exactly 5. Dylan leaned towards Xin Fat Man's ear, snickering as he spoke. Giving the werewolf a fierce glare, Xin Fat Man clenched his teeth, and with some reluctance, selected all, choosing to materialize them. Quietly, Xiao Xiao produced a large plate and placed it beneath the pictures of the chicken legs. A light blue beam materialized above the plate, tracing out the shape of the 5 chicken legs. With a few flickers, 5 steaming chicken legs appeared on the plate in Xin Fat Man's hand, the savory sauce rolling down the tender meat, as if just taken out of the pot. The rich aroma filled the air. That's amazing. Zheng Qing took a moment to gather his thoughts before blurting out in awe. Humph, this is nothing. Xin Fat Man lifted the plate, a mix between boasting and regret. Zheng Qing respectfully selected the smallest one and examined it closely for a long while before daring to take a bite. This is a special delicacy from our place. Xin Fat Man licked his lips, handed a chicken leg to Xiao Xiao, and said grudgingly, You're getting off easy. Dylan frowned, looking troubled at the 3 chicken legs left on his plate. You don't like chicken legs, do you? Xin Fat Man asked eagerly, then laughed heartily, having apparently had a revelation. I forgot. Vampires and such can't eat these things. But werewolves don't have this issue. Dylan swiftly snatched a chicken leg, tossed it into his mouth, and in the blink of an eye, it was all gone, and he spit out the clean, shiny bone with a plop sound. The smooth, slender chicken bone fell into the plate in the fat man's hand, making a clinking sound. The traces of soup lingered on Dylan's lips. As he chewed on the chicken meat, he chuckled mischievously. I was just contemplating whether to choose the one with the thickest meat or the most complete Xian fat man, with a gloomy face, didn't utter a word, and squeezed onto the balcony. The fat flower cat, which a moment ago appeared very laid back, darted onto the balcony like lightning, firmly pressing down a chicken leg with its two paws. Xian fat man instantly forgot about his plate, opened his claws, seized the last one, and quickly stuffed it into his mouth. A cat, a man, both with fat faces twisted, chewing, gasping, and staring fiercely at each other. A pancake face, two dead fish eyes. Xian fat man spat out a clean chicken bone with a plop, roughly rubbed the flower cat's fat face, and grunted unhappily. Not cute at all. The fat cat meowed a couple of times, its cheeks still patiently moving. How did you know it likes chicken legs? Zheng Qing tossed aside the chicken bone in his hand, licked his lips, and asked curiously while looking at the man and the cat facing off on the table. Who cares what it likes? Xian fat man was hurt and angered by that question. Who wouldn't like my favorite? I don't, Dylan said slowly. You are not human. Xian pointed his plump index finger and dismissively scoffed. Besides, the one who ate the fastest doesn't have a say. But that's a cat. Zheng Qing corrected. You think a cat would like chicken legs? Fat man argued confidently. Zheng Qing nodded, then shook his head, feeling something was off. The plump cat on the windowsill flicked its ears, lazily stretched its body, and swaggered around the dorm with its tail raised like a lord carrying a flag. After a patrol, it settled comfortably in a crevice on the windowsill. It felt a strange scent in the dorm, not fragrant or foul, just strange. Strange. It groomed its slick whiskers, shook its head, suppressing the huge curiosity rising up. Curiosity killed the cat, you know. However, considering these fresh faces seemed to possess some fat and oil, it didn't mind staying for a while. It licked its juicy paw, Tuan sighed in satisfaction, providing itself with an excellent excuse. Are we sleeping on the bare board? Zheng Qing, who had chosen his bed, touched the cold board and asked hesitantly, Didn't you bring your own bedding? Xiao Xiao, who was nearby, adjusted her glasses and asked in surprise. Of course. Zheng Qing's face turned a little red, and he quickly dug out his gray backpack. The school provides you with some stuff, but it's definitely not as comfortable as the stuff from home. Dylan flashed, and next moment, he crouched on his bed. He looked around at everyone else with a mischievous smile, pulled open the crimson curtain on his bed, and a large, old, heavy-looking black coffin lay sturdily on his bed. Xiao Xiao's face turned pale. I added my own touch. The school only gives you a mattress. Xian patted his bulky bedding contentedly, flopped onto it with great satisfaction, and the wooden bed moaned heavily at once. Zheng Qing took a melancholic look at his trembling bed and let out a deep sigh. The fat cat on the windowsill, squinting its eyes, was lazily grooming its whiskers, mockingly looking at the messy dorm. It was quite late when they finished setting up the bedding. Spreading the rough cloth sheet from home on the thick mattress, Zheng Qing threw himself onto it, pulled over the cotton quilt he brought from home, and took a deep breath. The rich cotton aroma filled his nostrils, warm like the Kong bedstove at his grandfather's house. Thinking of all the events of the day and looking forward to tomorrow's arrival, his thoughts drifted off, and he naturally fell asleep. August 31st, 2012, 1:35 p.m. A demonic invasion took place on the exclusive aircraft of the First University. The involved demon, Nikita, is a female, a newly born witch demon within 100 years. She was once an outstanding graduate candidate of the Alpha College of the First University. 170 centimeters tall, 56 kilograms, black hair. Upon transformation, she met the registered wizard standard with outstanding results in 5 different subjects. Now suspected to be an apprentice for the evil count, and the Great Witch Demon, Ulrich, suggested as a priority target for all Class C and above hunting teams. The successful hunting team would be rewarded 100 jade coins by the First University's Bounty Fund, 100 jade coins by the Trident Bounty Fund, an extra 100 jade coins by the Under the Moon Council, and a 100-point increase on the hunting team's registered points by the Mage Alliance. Appendix 1. Recent pictures of Nikita. Appendix 2. Nikita's recent activity area, only accessible by leaders of Class C and above hunting teams. This means that this little fairy who just came on board has become a big figure in the wanted notice, while we, the old ones who have been on the ship for more than 10 years, haven't even been remembered by the wizards. Ryan pulled at his collar and roared on the deck, pacing back and forth restlessly. In his hand, he waved a fresh wanted notice. In it, Nikita stood sideways in front of a messy bar, lifting her chin slightly, her eyes seductive yet proud. Beneath her feet lay a bleeding large snake, and behind her was a group of trembling figures. And why did she have to harm that adorable little worm? It's revenge. Reckless revenge. Ryan stood before the foresail, stomping his foot heavily. On the foremast, the large snakes coiled around, their tongues sticking out pitifully as they rubbed against Ryan's shoe heels. At the top of the cabin, Harry still wore his pink polo shirt and white-green floral beach shorts. He slumped in a reclining chair, not saying a word. He could understand Ryan's restlessness, because he, too, had accumulated rage in his chest. Nikita, even though she's a beauty, should follow the basic rules when being placed on the wanted list, Harry annoyingly thought. There's an old saying in the mortal world: if anyone in the world understands you, it must be your enemy. This saying is no more apt than when applied to wizards and demons. As foes entangled for thousands of years, wizards have a very complete and deep understanding of demons. This understanding is clearly manifested in the wanted notices issued by the Mage Alliance. At the beginning of each month, the Mage Alliance issues the latest wanted notices globally. Many existing demon notices get canceled, and many new ones enter people's sights. Though every demon is the target of hunting by the wizards, not every one of them qualifies to enter a wizard's wanted notice. Entering the wanted list means being prioritized for hunting by wizard hunting teams. It also means that wizards feel threatened by this demon, like the Sea Demon King, like the 4 great sea demons, like the several battle leaders aboard the Mist ship. Every one of them listed in the wanted notices is famous amongst the demons. As a result, demons regard the wanted notice as a list of the well-known. Many demons intentionally harm mortals and increase their bloody values just to enter this wanted notice. Even so, most demons only qualify for a D or lower ranking on the wanted notice. A reward of 300 jade coins, 100 hunting team points, and of C grade. Harry whined, slapping the Ladies and Flowers magazine on his face, his voice filled with sorrow. Nikita might become this year's Rookie King. Rookie King is a term among young demons. It refers to a demon who is newly listed in the wanted notice by the Mage Alliance in a year, and has the highest bounty amount and level. According to historical experience, many Rookie Kings could grow into great demons. This means some higher-grade demons have already set their sights on Nikita. Ryan, restless and pacing, halted, tugged his blonde hair, looked up into the sky, and sighed deeply. The deck fell into an awkward silence. In the deep blue sky, only a large black bird was stretching its wings, circling cautiously around. Compared with the deck that had just fallen silent, the cabin of the Mist ship had always been extremely quiet. The cold wind of the North Sea rolled at the narrow window, hesitating, not daring to enter recklessly. The sunlight was exceptionally cold and only cast a faint white shadow on the wooden table in front of the window. There is not a single light in the dim captain's cabin. However, compared to the previous time, there were many more luminescent bugs in the room. They crawled carelessly throughout every corner of the room, their bodies twinkling with a green glow. Perhaps these were the captain's new pets? Nikita knelt in front of the wooden table, staring at a green bug perched on a nearby bucket, speculating to herself. The captain of the missed ship lazily rested his chin on the table, his eyes forever blurred as he gazed toward where the sea meets the sky. He had been in this position for quite a while now. The unsettled female demon kneeling before the table fidgeted. The captain removed his gaze from the horizon and turned his attention to the ancient scroll on the table. The female demon, careful, threw a quick, nervous glance. She remembered seeing this scroll the last time she had entered the captain's room. Curious, the captain tossed the scroll over to the female demon, his voice very gentle. Then, take a look. Nikita closed her eyes, terrified, not daring to move an inch. You're not completely stupid. The captain snapped his fingers, and an aged elf with pointed ears and pale skin crawled out from the darkness of the cabin, picked up the scroll, and slowly retreated back into the darkness. Not stupid, but why expose yourself? The captain pointed towards the ceiling, his tone a smidge colder. Also, why on earth did you repeatedly bring your tail on board? Nikita was shaking vigorously. I don't know. The female demon wept as she laid on the floor. Don't know. The captain, surprised, raised his eyelids slightly, his dark pupils shaking a touch. This response was somewhat unexpected. If the female demon could have found a suitable excuse, perhaps he might have given her a more comfortable death. For example, simply extracting her brain. But the phrase, I don't know, was disturbingly disappointing. Was there anything more irresponsible than these words? The captain licked his green-black lips. It had been quite some time since he last relished a female demon's heart. Nikita distinctly felt an aura of pure terror enveloping her, suffocating. You can check my memories. The female demon screamed. You will find a satisfactory answer. Death's memory is flawed. The captain of the missed ship paused for a moment, reaching out his hand, placing it atop Nikita's head. An intense pain emanated from the top of her head. The female demon bit her arm, passed out on the floor. Silent river, silent forest, the trickster's parents, a small piece of dark bread, the acceptance letter from Alpha College of the First University, a pair of warm, green eyes. The captain of the missed ship smirked, moving his hand slightly. The unconscious female demon let out a faint moan. The private jet of the Alpha College. The insatiable hunger and violent bloodlust buried deep within the female demon's heart. The hostage situation and the standoff inside the restaurant. The hurried arrival of the special plane escort. So that's how it is. The captain moved his hand from atop Nikita's head, muttered to himself. The sweat soaked into his palm as he pulled out a white handkerchief, wiped his hand, and tossed it on top of the female demon. Get up, he commanded. The female demon trembled, slowly opened her eyes. Then, trembling, she knelt back up. Since the task has been completed, feel free to stay aboard. The captain of the missed ship said, with a warm smile, Don't worry, I'm tired of demon brains. I don't like the spicy memory. Compared to that, the mellow memories of the wizards are much more my taste. Moreover, the memory you just brought with you is quite good. Nikita's lips trembled, forcing a dry chuckle. The captain's right hand slid down her cheek on her bare shoulder, exclaiming, Being young really does feel good. Then he took his sharp fingernail on his right index finger and etched in him on her shoulder. The dark purple blood barely had time to flow out of the wound before it darkened, leaving a deep mark. Nikita bowed, prostrating herself at his feet, and kissed the hem of his robe. From now on, you can refer to me as Captain, like they do. Red is the primary color scheme of the room. A dark red carpet stretches from the doorway to the windowsill. Only a bookcase, a desk, and 3 leather armchairs are arranged on the carpet. The massive redwood bookcase takes up one entire wall. Within the transparent glass cabinet, thick volumes of books are carefully stacked like an awaiting troop of soldiers. A figure with a pompadour hairstyle is sitting behind a date-red desk, puffing a smoking pipe. Light blue smoke wafts up from the pipe, forming a heavy cloud on the roof. The desk is littered with disarrayed documents. The owner of the room, squinting and frowning, is flipping through the papers, creating a rustling noise. Thump, thump, thump. A rhythmic knock echoes through the room. Come in. The owner of the room removes the pipe from his mouth, taps it on the edge of the desk, and instructs with a hoarse voice. The door silently opens. A tall figure steps into the room. He is dressed in loose black robes. The high collar stands upright, partially concealing his face. His snow-white hair forms a stark contrast with his smooth forehead. The visitor glances at the smoke that clouds the ceiling, frowns, and opens the law book in his hand. "Exterminate the smoke." A gentle voice calls out. A gust of wind swirls from the void, driving the smoke from the ceiling out of the room. "Professor Emma has reminded you many times to smoke less. You're late." The owner of the room raps the desk, responding in an even more dissatisfied tone. "There's a pile of work waiting to be handled in school. You've made me wait an extra half an hour here." "There's been a new development," the white-haired guest murmured. "There's always been development, hasn't there? Is there anything in this world that really halts in progression?" "Nikita and Thomas are lovers. That's not a secret," the owner of the room responded dryly. "Thomas had discovered vulnerability in the private jet a long time ago, and he only told Nikita about this." The room falls into a lengthy silence. This is a very serious accusation. The owner takes a deep puff from his pipe, the red tobacco shimmering in the white fog. "We didn't intend to accuse anyone." The white-haired guest spoke calmly as ever. "In fact, it was Thomas who told us about this." "Where is he?" "In the North Sea." "For reasons." Thomas has always been able to track Nikita. He discovered that Nikita had boarded the missed ship twice. Therefore, Thomas reported this only after the situation got completely out of hand. The owner of the room roared, rudely interrupting the guest's explanation. "Where did you get such audacity from? How dare you? You just started dealing with the demons yesterday? Don't you already know the situation with Nikita? That little fellow who escaped from Silent Forest was taken away by Nikita. Did you know that? The little one's life lamp went out on his very first day aboard the missed ship. Did you know that? Do you think your cover-up can save anyone? Is it for Nikita or Jojo? This is dereliction of duty. This is murder. You've all greatly disappointed me." The white-haired guest remained silent. In the room, the only sound left is the heavy gasp from the owner. It takes quite a while. Smoke gently floats from the pipe once more, beginning to accumulate slowly under the ceiling. The guest stands quietly in the smoke, using no spells to dissipate the suffocating gas. After a long silence, the owner speaks again. His voice is somewhat hoarse, but his tone has calmed down. "How much do you reckon those demon spawns know?" "Not much." The visitor carefully contemplated, then slowly replied. "The information Jojo and her mother can access is limited. Any demon art that erodes memory will lose a lot of information. Thomas thinks that Nikita trying to sneak into the special plane only indicates that they have noticed some clues. This means that they're still hesitating. That little demon from the mist never hesitates, not to mention that brute from the iceberg. If they take action, it means they're already getting restless. Unless they knock each other's brains out, there's no getting past this round." The man of the house exhaled a thick cloud of smoke. His tone depicted a certain helplessness. "Send a message asking that scamp Thomas to roll back home as quickly as possible. He hangs around the North Sea every day. Better be careful not to let those demon spawns take advantage of him." The visitor silently nodded. "What about Shui?" "Vice Principal Shure is the rotating warden of the Black Prison this month." The visitor cautiously reminded. "Last week, you signed and approved the professor's joint meeting regarding this academic year's duty schedule." "Did I now?" The man rubbed his shiny, bald head and gave an embarrassed giggle. "I've had so much on my plate. God knows where that impossibly old headmaster has disappeared to. Leaves a whole mess behind. Makes one rip one's hair out, haha." The gray-haired young visitor tucked his head deeper into his collar, a hint of resignation in his eyes. He wished he could disappear from the office at that moment. After all, he was not the headmaster of Juyo Academy. Meanwhile, a little female monster from the North Sea was also trying hard to reduce her own presence. She eagerly hoped that the 4 terrifying big monsters before her would completely disregard her existence. But her wish was doomed to be unfulfilled. The North Sea in late summer to early autumn, the cold wind was not that strong yet. The soy sauce blue sea surface was like a huge piece of frosted glass, turbid, calm, without any ripples. The four big sea monsters sat facing each other. Not far behind them, for legendary battleships were moored in the north wind, silent and still. It was the second time in a short period that the big sea monsters had met. If the Wizards' Alliance had known about it, they might have been so frightened to instantly go into full combat readiness. Nikita maliciously speculated about the reactions of the wizards, trying hard to divert her own attention. She no longer felt the excitement of meeting the four big sea monsters for the first time. Only fear and anxiety remained from the bottom of her heart. 3 heavy gazes fell atop of her head. The little monster was absolutely certain that, without the figure of the mist captain in front of her, she would definitely be torn to shreds by Theseus' gazes. A fish leapt out of the sea. Then it dropped heavily on the calm surface of water, scatters into a splatter. The iceberg captain's small, blood-red eyes swept over the fish, again landing on the mist captain. It gave a low roar. We all heard about the matter of the First Major Academy's special plane. The voice of Vortex Captain remains piercingly sharp. So were his remarks. To let a juvenile handle such a dangerous task. Mist, you really haven't matured. Now that things are messed up, alerting those wizards, someone has to take responsibility. Nikita hid behind the captain, trembling slightly. She closed her eyes in terror, for fear of hearing some terrible remarks. The smile was gone from the mist captain's face. He coldly watched the few colleagues in front of him, his voice still soft though. Although my crew didn't get into the First Major Academy, they still managed to probe. The other captains looked curious. According to the convention, a student flight needs 3 to 5 full-time professors to randomly guard. But based on actual responses, there are only a few mediocre teaching assistants on the plane. The corners of Mist Captain's mouth curled up slightly. He seemed to be in a good mood. From a certain perspective, this means that the First Major Academy is understaffed. But that doesn't mean the old thing has already left the school. The Vortex Captain screamed. That's why we need to keep probing, the Mist Captain added placidly, looking at the others. The next question is who's going to be the second? Iceberg Captain lazily shook his bulky body, lifting his claw to scratch his chin. Vortex Captain pulled at the seaweed hanging on him, took off his shoes, and knocked a shell out of them. The Poseidon Captain sat cross-legged, holding a gigantic wine gourd in his hand, gulping wine into his mouth. Hearing the suggestion of the Mist Captain, he put down his wine gourd, wiped the wine from his beard, and laughed out loud. I've already begun my probe. Mist Captain raised his eyebrows. Thanks to your little witch demon causing a commotion on the plane, my man is already into the academy now. Appropriate for sacrifices and blessings. Inauspicious for consecration. Zheng Qing lay in bed, yawning and lazily calculating the date with his fingers buried in his quilt. Not a good day to start school at all. His eyes squinted, he took a deep breath. Today was Monday. There was a spell course in the morning. This would be his first class in his college career. How exciting. Perhaps the excitement from yesterday hadn't faded. Zheng Qing didn't sleep well at night. He was even awakened by a nightmare once, but quickly fell back asleep. He exhaled a long, dull breath from deep within his chest and opened his eyes. The dormitory was very quiet. The sky was just beginning to brighten, and through the glass of the balcony, the faint morning calls of birds could be heard from outside the window. Zheng Qing quietly climbed out of bed. The large desk in the middle of the dorm room still had the cardboard box of little elves on it. He carefully lifted the fine velvet blanket covering over the cardboard box. In the box, the little ones were still fast asleep. Zheng Qing frowned, finding the situation a bit tricky. Maybe you should go and ask the professor after class today, inquiring about how to help the injured elf. But for now, he was truly helpless. Zheng Qing sighed, replacing the blanket over the cardboard box. The fat cat nesting on the windowsill twitched its ears, yawned widely, and buried its head deeper into its front paws. Nearby, a faint snore came from Xian Fat Man's bed. Zheng Qing noticed that a part of his cool quilt had fallen to the ground and gently tucked it back into place with a smile. Dylan's bed, on the other hand, was very quiet. He wasn't sure if the coffin was blocking the snore, or if Dylan just didn't snore in his sleep. Zheng Qing's gaze quickly swept past the tightly closed, heavy curtains. The last thing he wanted was to catch bad luck early in the morning. After washing up, Zheng Qing went out to the balcony, planning to do his morning exercises. He habitually pulled out a handful of hamster food from his bag, ready to sprinkle it on the windowsill. Then he paused. He gave a bitter smile. He had become too accustomed to doing his morning practice alongside that chubby hamster. He didn't know if anyone would feed it now that he was gone. He closed his eyes in longing, stretching his limbs slightly, only to frown in frustration. The dormitory's balcony was a bit narrow, not spacious enough for him to stretch out. If you want to do your morning practice, it's better to go downstairs. Xiao Zhao's voice drifted over. The dorm isn't a suitable place. Turning his head, he saw Xiao Xiao had already changed into a dark red training suit, busy fastening his belt. Zheng Qing quickly went back to the dormitory to change his clothes. Before he left, he hesitated, pointed at the still sleeping Excian fat man and the silent Dylan, opened his mouth, and silently asked, "What about them?" Xiao Xiao didn't speak, but pulled him out of the dormitory. "Do you think werewolves like the daytime? Or do vampires like it?" Zheng Qing thought about the moonlit night werewolves and the vampires in the darkness, shaking his head. "So, don't observe the nocturnal with the notion of a day walker." Xiao Xiao held his large glasses in his hand, pondering whether or not to put them in his backpack. How does he even attend classes? Just because they don't like the daylight, that doesn't mean they can't appear in the daytime, especially since we're at the University of Firsts. There are many doors and long corridors around the campus. What about Xian? That fat guy doesn't look like someone who does morning exercise. Xiao Xiao adjusted his large glasses, holding his black notebook close to his chest, and sighed. "Moreover, creatures like blue giants are different from scholars like us. We only draw power from textbooks, while they rely on harnessing their inherent talents and developing their bloodline ability." Thinking about Xian Fat Man, who was snoring in his bed, Zheng Qing felt a sense of life's unfairness. The campus was not crowded in the early morning. On the sports ground, Zheng Qing noticed that most of the students had yellow faces. The infrequent students with white or black skin types could easily be identified as pros by their robust physique. They're all combat fanatics. Watching a bald, dark-skinned giant practicing boxing with heavy shackles on, Zheng Qing couldn't help shaking his head. Squeak! A white figure appeared from seemingly nowhere and excitedly circled around Zheng Qing. "Poseidon!" Zheng Qing shouted excitedly, grabbing the fox by the scruff of the neck and holding it in his arms. He roughed it up delightedly. "Hey, you rascal! Have you come here to walk a dog?" Xiao Xiao huffed jealously, giving a sidelong glance. His old tortoise was nowhere to be found. "This is a fox." Zheng Qing corrected him while brushing Poseidon's fluffy tail. Then he dropped the bug-eyed little fox on the ground, gazed into the sky that was only just showing hints of dawn, moved to the side, and started practicing boxing. There are thousands of foundation methods in this world. Guidance technique, the foundational method that Zheng Qing's teacher passed down, was one of them. These movements looked somewhat like boxing, but were not cohesive. Each pose, each movement, although not rigid, was devoid of a smooth, flowing, Rui, scepter-like feel. Zheng Qing had once asked his teacher about the name of the guidance technique. The teachers replied succinctly, "Unarmed." What did unarmed mean? Did it imply that the boxing technique wasn't old enough? Or grand enough? Or it wasn't boxing at all? Zheng Qing never quite understood. He only felt that this boxing technique was as unfathomable as his teacher. After completing several rounds of movements, Zheng Qing gradually felt the dormant power within him awakening and flowing through his veins in a lively manner. In just a moment, he felt as if his entire body was enveloped in a warm heat. He soon got immersed in it, oblivious to his surroundings, and let his energy flow naturally. Not far away, Poseidon was also standing up straight, scratching around, and making all kinds of nonsensical movements. Its little pink nose wrinkled in the cool air, assuming a serious demeanor. Xiao Xiao sat on the green stone under the tree, facing the Chaoyang, and was quietly practicing deep breathing exercises. His old tortoise, with its sienna shell, had crawled over at some point, half closed its eyes, and become motionless like the stubborn stone under Xiao Xiao. A bit further away, on a vast lawn, under sturdy trees, and beside the tranquil, silvery lake, groups of 3 to 5 students gathered, practicing their morning exercises quietly and ardently in the early morning glow. Slowly, the sky started to brighten. The crimson Chaoyang struggled on the horizon, almost breaking free. Zheng Qing, sensing something, turned towards the Chaoyang, quieted his mind, slightly closed his fists, exhaled a long turbid breath, and enunciated a long duo sound. At the same time, Xiao Xiao under the tree widened his eyes, inflated his chest, and let out a clear whistle. Other students practicing their morning exercises nearby also started exhaling and making sounds. All around them, clear and heavy sounds echoed, pulsating through the morning campus, ringing across the sky, scattering the surrounding clouds. Heat surged, rolling around and flamboyantly exhibiting its vitality and vigor. In the distance, at a mountain peak under a tower, a few professors in black robes were huddled together, talking about something. Hearing the resonant chanting that shook the surroundings, they couldn't help but burst into laughter. To enjoy the morning rosy glow while drinking and to savor fragrant flowers under the moon, a lean and vivacious old professor, twirling his snowy short beard, chuckled and remarked, "With their persistence, they do not let our efforts go in vain." The vigor of youth, another short and plump elder sighed sentimentally. However, it's uncertain whether it's the vigor that shapes the young or the young that shape the vigor. The last tall elder took a deep breath, expressing his feelings. After exhaling a deep breath, Zheng Qing makes a fist and resumes his steady pose. As if sensing a change, the morning sun leaps above the horizon and darts across the sky. Zheng Qing takes a long breath at the right moment. The first strand of a 7-colored sunrise flare, draped over his body by the morning sun, transforms into solar radiance and vanishes into his mouth. Drink the sun in the morning, eat the twilight in the evening, and at midnight, cultivate the moonlight, Xiao Xiao intones, shaking his head. Snapping back to reality, Zheng Qing sees that the students around him have various expressions, some eager, some despondent. "What?" he asked curiously. Merely didn't absorb the solar radiance. Xiao Xiao has been sitting calmly on the boulder all the while and sighs a little. Practice is done daily, but not all practices yield results. We all do our morning practice, but not everyone can step out into the world as a result. How many can, really? Zheng Qing doesn't quite understand, nor does he seek to. Poseidon is currently bouncing around at his side, teasing him. He grits his teeth, contemplating how to catch and crush this little creature. Far away, Xian Fat Man is standing at the sports grounds holding a large bag of breakfast, shouting at them. Feeling his stomach rumble, Zheng Qing gives the paper bag an appreciative look. The classroom for the curse class is located in room 601, the main building. Since it's the first period of the day, a few of them arrive at the classroom early. The classroom isn't full. The students are scattered around in small groups. Some are wearing heavy vision aids, carefully rotating the glass ball they hold, watching the distorted rays of light inside. Some lean against tables, casually flipping through their law books as they let the emitted rays of light weave into a glorious spectacle around them. Some sit in meditation, ignoring everyone else, with white ribbons of breath flowing in and out of their noses. Everyone seems to busy with their own thing. Zheng Qing pauses slightly at the door. The classroom looks just like a massive study. Instead of a ceiling, the roof shows a deep starry sky. A few egg-sized white light orbs sway within this narrow space, casting a gentle glow. In the front of the classroom is a dark green blackboard. A crudely done stick figure, colored with chalk, is joyously doing somersaults on it. The falling chalk dust behind it forms a stylish welcome sign. A group of elves, dressed in gray work clothes, are sitting in a neat row at the edge of the blackboard, smiling as they watch the chaotic classroom. In front of the blackboard is a podium about 1.5 feet high. In one corner of the podium is a dark red lectern, on top of which neatly stacked is a box of chalk and a few booklets. The back wall of the classroom, which is opposite the blackboard, is completely taken up by a large beige bookcase. The bookcase is crammed full of books of varying thickness. In a corner of the bookcase, there are several different-sized globes. On the left side of the classroom, a row of neat lab benches is neatly arranged, their silver-white surfaces shining brightly. Lined up against the wall are an array of clean test tubes and other laboratory equipment. To the right of the classroom are two large French windows, the silver-gray curtains neatly tied at the sides. Through the tall windows, you can see Linzhong Lake glimmering in the distance. The overall color scheme of the classroom is pleasing to the eyes, not the least bit chaotic. Welcome, welcome, heartfelt welcome. An apathetic voice comes from behind Zheng Qing, startling him. When he turns around, he finds that a sketch is talking to him. This painting must have been hanging behind the door for a long time. The paper is slightly yellowed, and the thumbtacks at the corners of the paper have even rusted. The drawing paper is blank, except for a small figure outlined in pencil. The oval-shaped head of the character isn't fully drawn, and the pencil line extends a bit as a stand-in for hair. A few strands of hair are sparsely hanging to the side, as if a gust of wind could make him bald. The eyes are two uneven circles. The nose is a triangle. The mouth, despite being the most spirited part, is just an elegantly curved line. The artist seems to have run out of patience after drawing the head. The body of the figure is exceptionally simplistic. An oval, not much bigger than the head, is the body, while four thin lines serve as its limbs. The artist didn't even bother to give the stick figure a pair of hands or feet. At the lower right corner of the paper is a signature that reads May. Maybe the month May? Zheng Qing doesn't know. But he does know this stick figure doesn't look happy. Seeing someone looking in his direction, the drawing waves its stick-like arm and yells. Could you do me a favor? Draw a hat for me. It's almost winter and my head is cold. Xiao Xiao stops Zheng Qing from grabbing his pencil. Decide whether or not you want to draw him a hat in a month. The short fellow says solemnly, think thrice before you act. Zheng Qing shrugs his shoulders and puts his pencil back into his pocket. Behind the classroom desks, Zheng Qing spots two familiar faces. Li Ming hangs her head, sitting in the center of the first row. To her left is Lu Fei Fei, who keeps a large snake, and to her right is a black-haired girl. Lu Fei Fei's eyes are half closed as she engrosses herself in a large, thick book. The girl with long black hair is apparently reprimanding Li Ming, looking quite serious. The opening of the classroom door catches the attention of the young girl. Upon recognizing who it is, her eyes shine brightly. Sis, that short guy is the freshman champion I mentioned to you before. Li Ming pulls at the arm of the black-haired girl and yells at the top of her lungs, that watermelon-headed guy. The classroom suddenly falls silent. Everyone doing some sort of work all look toward the door. Zheng Qing suppresses a laugh, subtly stepping sideways to reveal the short figure behind him. Xiao Xiao stays silent, a dark expression on his face. The black long-haired girl frowns, then pinches Li Ming's ear. Manners! She fixes a stern gaze on the young girl. Li Ming pouts, her face red. She has teary eyes, but stays silent. Zheng Qing pulls a Xiao a few steps forward toward the girls. Ah, little college girls crying? He looks at Li Ming with a mocking smile. You're the one who's crying. The girl shouts back furiously, wiping her nose. The wind outside is just too strong. Zheng Qing glances at the French windows on the right side of the classroom. All the windows are tightly shut. He quickly looks away. And who might you be? Zheng Qing makes a gesture toward the girl with long black hair, sitting next to Li Ming. This is my cousin. She's the third-place newcomer this year. The girl's attention is successfully diverted. She holds her head high, looking proudly at the boys. The cousin shows a slightly embarrassed smile and pinches the young girl's ear again. My name's Jiang Yu. The girl blinks her bright eyes, tossing her hair to reveal a small section of fair neck. Ming Ming told me you guys were really nice to her on the Airbus. I'm really grateful for that. Li Meng makes a face, but she doesn't say anything. The fat guy reading the newspaper? No, it's the short guy next to the fat guy. The one with the black notebook and the watermelon head. He's the top-ranked freshman from Jiuyo Academy this year. He doesn't look that impressive. I heard that the top-ranked freshman at Starry Sky Academy this year is a really handsome guy. Don't underestimate him. His global wizard exam score was perfect, 20 points higher than the second placer. Wow, that's incredible. Is this a case of quality over quantity? Whispers came from all directions. All the freshmen showed their curiosity openly, especially the girls who were already of age. They unabashedly sized Xiao Xiao up, critiquing him, and seemed like they desired nothing more than for Xiao Xiao to vent his anger at them through a fit of rage. Even students from a few neighboring classrooms came to join the crowd, crowding the classroom door to peek at the rumored person who aced the entrance exam. Xiao Xiao kept his head down, flipping through his notebook without a care for the attention he was attracting. Seeing the situation, Xian Fat Man hastily rolled up his newspaper and shot off to the back row of the classroom. Only Zheng Qing stayed beside Xiao Xiao, enduring the indistinguishable attitudes from those surrounding them. Right now, he was grateful that the school did not announce admission scores. But at the same time, he worried about how long he could keep his second-rate position a secret. Li Meng has mentioned more than once that her cousin wanted to duel the two first-year scholarship students from Jiuyo Academy. The curly-haired dog on the plane conveyed that a powerful veteran from Alpha Academy will pick a fight with a first-year scholarship student from Jiuyo Academy. Not to mention the hair-raising discourse happening right in front of him. Not a single thing was worry-free. But compared to all the worrying stuff, the scene in front of his eyes was even more unsettling. I'm sorry. Meng Meng has brought trouble to you guys. Jiang Yu apologized to the two boys. Word has gotten around the school that the top freshman from Jiuyo Academy this year has a perfect entrance exam score. The best admission score in the past century. After knowing that you were admitted into the school under special recruitment, Meng Meng assumed you were the top freshman. If she has said anything inappropriate, I apologize on her behalf. Zheng Qing was internally screaming, "Don't apologize, as long as no fight breaks out, it's all right." But on the surface, he still put on an honest smile. No, not at all. Li is very brave. Xiao Xiao kept silently flipping his notebook as if he was in a different world. Is his entrance exam score really perfect? Jiang Yu asked with a smile as she chatted with Zheng Qing. Her face showed no dissatisfaction. I don't know. Zheng Qing honestly answered. He really did not know. Xiao Xiao never seemed to mention his entrance exam score. He is the top student, said Li Meng somewhat indignantly beside Jiang Yu. You wouldn't know. The way he recited the Wizard's Encyclopedia on the plane, he could spew out the full entry of elves at the drop of a hat. Deep in his heart, Zheng Qing was also somewhat uncertain. You are the top student. The little girl complained before turning around with an expectant face looking at Xiao Xiao. It's 89 years. Xiao Xiao finally lifted his head from his notebook and looked up at Jiang Yu. What? Zheng Qing did not understand. It's the best admission score in 89 years. Xiao Xiao repeated, sighing. So, you really are the top student of Jiuyo? Li Meng was a bit excited as she clung onto Jiang Yu's arm. Who said that? Xiao Xiao looked a bit puzzled. I was just correcting her statement. I'm not this year's top freshman at Jiuyo. You're not. The shock from this news seemed a bit too much for Li Meng to handle. She climbed onto the desk and yelled, But on the plane, I was specially recruited. Xiao Xiao lifted his eyelid, looked at the little girl for a moment, and repeated calmly. Li Meng was at a loss for words. Indeed, Xiao Xiao never admitted that he was the top freshman. He only mentioned once on the plane that he was specially recruited for admission. The result was forcibly recognized as the top student by Li Meng and widely publicized. The crowd onlookers gasped in surprise, somewhat disappointed, and began to disperse. Li Meng was also pulled down from the table by Jiang Yu. She pouted, feeling somewhat gloomy. She still murmured, It must be him. My grandma read my fortune. I was definitely going to meet a scholarship student on the plane. Zheng Qing, who was planning to console her, was sweating coldly. He forcibly turned around to Xiao Xiao and laughed. You are a special recruit, huh? Ha! I always thought special recruits were scholarship students. I'm not a scholarship student. Xiao Xiao shook his head and pulled out a piece of paper, showing it to everyone. Scholarship students do not need to pay tuition, and the school provides a subsidy. This is my tuition fee receipt. Zheng Qing felt cold sweat soaking his body again. He never knew that the Wizard University would issue receipts for paid tuitions. Apparently noticing his confusion, after saying goodbye to the Jiangyu sisters, Xiao Xiao casually flipped open his notebook and gave Zheng Qing a detailed explanation of the scholarship system. This is a traditional scholarship system for the first university. Researchers can't confirm its origin. It's only known that every year before the start of the new school year, the faculty meeting would select a list of students to become recipients of scholarships for that academic year. The number of scholarships provided is not fixed. Sometimes a learning academy might have several scholarships, and sometimes an entire academy might not have a scholar. The most severe period, according to records, was 10 years, when none of the 4 universities had a single scholarship. In a certain sense, this represents the significance of scholarships. For students, this significance is extremely obvious. Even outside of the first university, like in the Four Seasons Pavilion or in Beta Town, being a scholarship student can earn various discounts and benefits when shopping. Not to mention how much more significant it would be within the school. One of the basic privileges a scholarship student receives is to be automatically selected for the annual small arcana of their academy. This means that at the end of the term, there will be extra credits on their transcripts. Among the nearly 10,000 students at the first university, less than 60 could squeeze onto that distinguished list. Apart from the leaders of various clubs, hunting team leaders, important members of the student council, there are only a few spots left. These few spots are automatically allocated to scholarship students every year. According to Xiao Zhao's explanation, since the Wand started compiling the Arcana report, no scholarship student has been excluded from this list. Also, apart from being part of the Arcana list, during various activities organized by the school or academy, scholarship students are also treated as student representatives, sitting with the president of the student council, the president of the club union, and even the dean of the academy or the president of the first university. For many students, this doesn't just represent 10 jade coins. It represents an unparalleled honor and countless invisible wealth. As they were talking, the two of them had already sat in the last row of the classroom. Xi and Fat Man had grabbed their seats long ago, and there was a familiar face. Brother Xian. Zheng Qing approached a flushed student with excitement, punching him lightly. Didn't see you earlier. You're blind as a bat. Zhang Ji Xian rolled his eyes and snorted. Next to him, the ever-engrossed Xian Fat Man, flipping through his newspaper, suddenly cried out, "Holy shit, big news!" Zheng Qing pulled the law book and standard spells. College freshman from his gray bag, prepared his notebook and writing brush, and calmly awaited the teacher's arrival. Xiao Xiao sat by the window, propping his head up and gazing towards Linzhong Lake, his fingertips lightly tapping on the black shell notebook on the table. Zhang Ji Xen had his face buried in his arms and was unmoving, lying on the table. Didn't you sleep well last night? You seem a bit run down. Zheng Qing prodded the red-faced male student with his pen. Post-flight symptoms. Zhang Ji Xian's face remained buried in his arms. As he groaned, I had nightmares all night. My roommate said I was grinding my teeth, scare them half to death. Zheng Qing nodded in empathy. He too had had nightmares last night, and his eyelid had been twitching incessantly since the morning. I think the charter flight's disembarkation process isn't quite right, but we don't have any other choices. Why don't we use boats? I mean, since we're on an island, using a boat should be pretty convenient too, right? Too slow, the port is too far, and there are more demons in the sea. Xiao Xiao replied without turning his head. His voice was languid. On top of that, if we take a boat, we probably won't fall out of the sky, but we'll definitely come ashore drenched. A few girls in the front row couldn't help but chuckle. They were quite fond of Xiao Zhao's dry humor. Why don't we take the clock to school? Zheng Qing thought of his way home from Great Ming Pavilion and couldn't help asking. I feel like that kind of magic is convenient and fast, and there's hardly any chance of accidents. Clock passages require very advanced magic building techniques. They're a luxury means of transportation. Additionally, with so many students and limited lanes, accidents can easily occur. Xiao Xiao had not finished explaining when the heavy-set Xin from Zheng Qing's other side suddenly exclaimed, "Holy crap! Huge news!" The plump boy hit the table in his excitement, startling all the students around him. "What's the matter with you? The guy is crazy." The girls in the front row complained while holding their chests, shooting the hefty Xin a sharp glare. Zheng Qing curiously took the newspaper from Xion's hand. On the back of the newspaper was an ad. Beta Town Post. You give us 24 minutes. We give you 24 hours of the world. He flipped to the front page headline, where a line of bold black text caught his eye. Demon appears on the first university charter flight. We in the 2nd of August. Wu News Agency, Jiuyou Cable. Zheng Qing's spirits quickened, and he read on. A demon appeared on the first university's orientation charter flight. One crew member was killed, no student injuries reported. This flight left Chang'an Airport for the first university on Buji Island. The plane was carrying about 1,000 students, almost 300 of them freshmen, and about 20 crew members. At around midday, a demon appeared in the plane's third dining area, killing a crew member on the scene. The plane's security team arrived soon after, chasing off the demon. The first university's orientation charter flights are manufactured by Martin Toll Alchemy Company and operated by which Union Moonfall Airline Company. This model was put into use in 1990, replacing the cloud connecting boat system that had been in operation for a full 180 years. The system has not had any major glitches. Currently, representatives from the relevant companies are on Buji Island, undergoing a joint investigation by the First University and the Trident Sword, while the Great Wizard Council is performing further risk assessment. As of the morning of the 2nd of August at 9 o'clock sharp, the First University's hunting team was still tracking the perpetrator in the related North Sea areas. However, no major demons have claimed responsibility for the incident. It is believed that the demon on the plane was a young witch demon under 100 years old, named Nikita. She was once a dropout of the Alpha College of the First University. 10 years ago, she went missing during a practical activity in the Silent Forest, reappearing near a pyramid in Upper Egypt and clashing with a hunter who was killed in the conflict. It has been reported that the evil witch Duke Ulrich was spotted on the scene. Nikita was born in the northern district of Beta Town. Her parents died when she was young, and she was raised by a tricks magician. Our reporter, Lu Wei Pulitzer. The news report was plain and unremarkable. They didn't even post a picture of the female demon. If it had any merits, it was that it essentially detailed the situation. The only thing that made Zheng Qing uncomfortable was the last sentence of the news. He flipped through the previous pages, which were mostly discussing this accident, including cryptic comments from various commentators, sharp interpretations from different experts, and even a section on the Beta Town Post dedicated to readers' opinions on the accident. This isn't really news. I've already told you everything about it in detail. Zheng Qing skimmed through the report. Aside from the female demon's name, he didn't find any other valuable information. He shook his head and returned the newspaper to Xin. Not that one, this one. Xin Fat Man grabbed the newspaper with a look of contempt and flipped to the entertainment section. An entire page on the left was filled with a full-body image of a beautiful woman. Across her waist, a row of distorted, large characters read, Su Shijun has an unwed child. Father's identity a mystery. The female star was draped in a black cloak, her face turned aside from readers. Zheng Qing could only see her beautiful figure and melancholy eyes. At her feet lay a cluster of scattered roses, their crimson petals strewn all over the ground. The newspaper says Su Shijun has a child. Xin Fat Man exclaimed excitedly. The bustling classroom fell suddenly silent. Then the freshmen crowded around him. What did you say? Let me see. Impossible. It must be a rumor. Spreading rumors feels so good. Wide-eyed and agape, Zheng Qing watched the incoming crowd, not sure what to do. He vaguely recalled the name, Su Shijun. Xiao Xiao once mentioned that Su Shijun was the successor of the Qingqiu Su family and was even considered the #1 beauty in the wizard world. It seemed the flight attendant on the private jet was a member of the Su family. Zheng Qing glanced down, then again at the huge photograph in the paper. The beautiful woman in the paper, frustrated with the chaotic classroom, pulled up the hood of her cloak, hiding her face in the shadows. The entire page was left with just a shadowy blob. Zheng Qing shrugged, then handed the paper back to Xin Fat Man. With the help of a few crafty freshmen, Xin Fat Man projected the news into the air. Lady Sushi publicly stated yesterday that she has no interest in further cooperation with the Karen family. For the first time when answering a journalist's question, she revealed that she is married and has a son, and currently has no other long-term plans. Lady Su refused to respond to more questions. Lady Su Shijun, now 25 years old, is the legit heiress of the Qingqiu Su family and the youngest upper house parliamentarian of the Under the Moon Council. According to an early revelation from the Great Wizard Council spokesperson, the Wizard Evaluation Committee has received Lady Sushi's related assessment application. The Duke Milton is a council member of the Blood Race, the contemporary family head of the Karen family, and also one of the 5 upper house parliamentarians of the Under the Moon Council. It is rumored that the Duke has long been admiring the Su family, and therefore had several disputes with the Wolfman Prince, William Tabot. The spokesperson of the Qingqiu Su family declined to comment on Counselor Su's related statements. It is reported that Su Shijun will arrive at the First University in early October for the annual campus hunting party. She will host a press conference then, responding to related rumors. The article was quite short, most likely no more than 500 words. But everyone read it again and again, seriously trying to find a comforting phrase from the text. However, reality was simply cruel. The classroom fell silent. The boys looked pale, as if they were in mourning. Zheng Qing could understand the situation. After all, their beloved goddess suddenly having a child was a huge blow to any boy who held hope for her. But what the hell were the girls upset about? Likely Meng. She even burst into tears in her cousin's arms. Zheng Qing felt a bit annoyed. Although he was very interested in this legendary goddess of the wizard world, he had no particular feelings. He learned from a young age that distance would lead to indifference. When his peers were chasing after stars, he preferred to stay in the study practicing calligraphy. Moreover, he couldn't understand why this seemingly serious newspaper felt the need to publish such a tabloid-like story with such a large spread. The teacher is coming. A weird shout came from behind the shoddy pencil drawing by the classroom door. Quickly sit down.